Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This video is about CA Final Self-Paced Learning Module, Set B Costing. In this, we will be seeing chapter number 1, an introduction to strategic cost management. This is a theory video. We will be covering the theory part in this chapter. Also, there is no practical part in chapter 1. Everything is theory. We will be covering all the things about theory in this chapter. Fully, this chapter will be covered in this single video. Now, in this chapter, we will be seeing roughly these concepts: Michael Porter's value chain analysis, strategic positioning analysis, generic strategies, 5-force model, value proposition. These are all the main list of important concepts in this chapter. Other than this, we'll be covering all small concepts also, so we can get into the chapter. First thing is, what is strategic cost management? The chapter name itself, an introduction to the strategic cost management. What is the need for strategic cost management? Why we are doing it? What is the limitations in the traditional cost management? What are the benefits we are getting out of the strategic cost management? That all we'll be seeing. So, first, what is managing cost strategically? What is the meaning of strategic cost management? Anything which can be measured can also be controlled and managed. We will be measuring cost on the cost accounting part. Now we will be managing. What is the meaning of managing? We will be controlling it. We will be taking advantage of it. That is the meaning of managing the cost strategically. Earlier, cost control was the main motive. Now the main principle is cost management. The next thing is, here we have to see that cost accounting is related to ascertaining and recording of cost. Just accounting is done in the cost accounting part. But management accounting, it will create information from the report, and then it will be a support system for the business. It will help the business to make various decisions, formulate various strategies. These and all will be done by management accounting. Cost accounting will just record the data. That's all. Cost containment was the main focus before. In the traditional cost management system, cost should be controlled, maintaining the cost at a particular level. That was the main motive. But here we have changed the goal from cost containment to cost reduction. We are making changes in the process, and then we are reducing the cost permanently. That is a part of cost management. Traditionally, cost management focused only on cutting or reducing cost. Now what we are focusing on reducing cost. At the same time, we should not do any compromise on the quality. Same quality should be maintained, or else we can increase the value. We can increase the quality at the same cost or reduce the cost level. Providing same quality at a reduced cost, or providing a higher quality at the same cost. That is the principles here. Cost should be there. Quality should not be compromised. That is what they have given in the diagram format. The next thing is measuring and managing cost and aligning them to the business strategy. The measurement of cost and recording will be done by cost accounting. We should manage the cost and we should align them to the business strategy. What is the strategy of our organization? According to that strategy, we have to align the cost structure. We have to modify it and make it according to the strategy. What is the problem in traditional cost management? In traditional cost management, they used to think that cost cutting will always increase the profit. If you reduce the cost, this will increase the profit. How it will increase? Sales minus cost will be equal to profit. When you reduce the cost, this will directly increase the profit. That was the main belief. But now what we are seeing is that what will be the adverse effect of reducing cost? There are some negative points also for reducing cost. What are the negative points? If you are saving cost by avoiding to do maintenance, it will result in a major breakdown of machinery someday. In that day, you will not be able to do production. You should incur high maintenance cost on that particular day. This will reduce the profit. Even if you save the maintenance cost periodically, on one day it will become a major breakdown. You have to spend a large amount of money on that day. Next example is, if you reduce the number of service station. For example, you have a number of branches over the city. If you close some of the branches, you will save some cost. But when you close the branches, the customer will become dissatisfied. Many people are buying your product because you have branches all over the city. If you reduce the branches, customer will stop buying. So it will reduce the revenue of the company. A practical insight they have given. Many of the automobile sector, many cars people are buying because of the after sales service only. If a company has a brand has a service station network all over the city, you can easily do service for your cars. It will not be much of an issue because everywhere there is a service center. But if there is only small number of service center and you are not getting a proper service, people will not buy the brand of the car. Main thing is customer value proposition. The what value you are giving to the customer, that is very important. Traditional cost management will ignore competition, market growth and all they will not consider, customer requirement and all they will not consider. The main thing they will see is we have to reduce the cost, increase the profit. We should do it what we are capable to do. Within that itself we have to do it. They will not think about the customer part itself. Now they will not care about the inferior quality. But today we have to maintain the quality. They will do the costing based on financial accounting data itself. But nowadays for cost accounting, we are doing separate accounting in different manner. We have separate cost accounting standards and all. Quantitative in nature. They will just focus on the variance and deviation. They will compare actual performance, budgeted performance, and then they will see whether the numbers are increased or not. That alone they will see. They will not see the actual efficiency, actual capability of what we can improve. That and all they will not see. Process improvement and all will be ignored. Corrective function. Traditional cost management, it is a corrective function. They will react only if they see a problem. But nowadays, what is the cost management? They will try to predict the problem before it occurs and they will prevent the problem. Prevention is better than cure. Traditional cost management will solve the problem only after it is created. Next thing is short-term outlook. Traditionally, we will see only for a short term, but modern cost management looks for a long-term approach. Now, the need for strategic cost management. Why we want strategic cost management? We will do detailed cost analysis, cost structure and all we will do. We will gain a competitive advantage. This competitive advantage and all, the traditional method will not consider. We have to check at the market, competitor, customer, all the factors we have to see. We have to make the strategy based on the cost that we have. And then we have to see the big picture. Entire market, how much they are selling, what is our market share, how to improve the market share, what is the who are the customers, how we can target the customers, what we have to do for marketing. Everything will be seen by the modern cost management. It will give the big picture. Next, we are going to see about strategic cost management. Why we want to strategic cost management? That is even more discussed in detail in chapter number 2. We will see it there. Now, strategic cost management, what they are saying is that they will collect, process, analyze, and disseminate the cost data. It will help to support the organizational strategy as a whole. They will give the data for the strategy. Based on the underlying data only, the chief officers, chief executive officer, chief costing officer, chief information officer, chief security officer, chief operations officer, like that, all the officers will be taking decision based on the data provided by the management accountants. So it will help the strategy. Now, the strategic cost management is the use of cost information for deploying the strategy and then to practice superior performance to gain sustainable competitive advantage. We will use that to create strategy. We will perform better than the other competitor. We will give a competitive advantage. That is the meaning. This is the use for which we are doing the strategic cost management. Now, they will consider both quantitative and then qualitative. As we already said, they will also improve the process also. What is the actual process? How we can improve it? What is the efficiency there? How we can make a change in it? They will also see the numbers and also the actual process. The next thing is, what are the pillars of strategic cost management? We have 3 pillars. One is strategic positioning analysis, one is value chain analysis, and there is cost driver analysis. We will see one by one. Now, if we see in strategic management, the name of the subject itself is strategic cost management. Now, when you see the subject of strategic management, they have 4 steps in it. First step, formulate the strategy. You have to create the strategy and then communicate the strategy, inform it to the concerned people, implement the strategy, and then control the strategy. Controlling means you will be verifying whether it is achieving the desired result or not, whether it is working as planned. That and all you will measure. For that, the strategic cost management will provide the data, cost information it will provide for using in any one of the stages. The relationship between the pillars can be viewed as understanding the value chain will help in defining the optimal strategic position. It will help us to obtain the position in the market. Value chain analysis. First thing we are going to see about value chain analysis. This was formulated or it was created by Michael E. Porter in 1985. This was created by Porter. He is the one who advocated using the value chain analysis. What is value chain? It is a chain of activities that leads to the delivery of the final product to the customer. We are delivering the product to the customer. We are producing it. We are manufacturing it, and then we are doing a lot of activities in our business. The chain of activities. We are creating a chain. First, we will purchase the raw material. Then we will produce. Then we will store it. Then we will deliver to the customer. This is the rough chain which I have created. Like this, there will be a lot of activities which the business will be doing. Those things linked in a chain. That is the value chain. There will be 2 kinds of activities. One is the primary activities, second is the support activities. Primary activities are the most important. Support activities are of secondary importance. What are primary activities? Inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, marketing and sales service. These are the 5 important primary activities. And when you see support activities, you will have procurement, technology, human resource, firm infrastructure. These are the secondary support activities. What is the value chain? Value chain will have 2 set of activities, primary and secondary. And primary activity, what we have? Inbound logistics. What is inbound logistics? What a traditional business will do is that they will purchase the material and then they will transport it to the warehouse. Till the warehouse, we have to do the transportation. This transportation of raw materials, this we are purchasing raw materials. This this is called the inbound logistics. We are bringing raw material into the factory or warehouse. That is called inbound logistics. Receiving, storing, and handling raw material input. This does not cover the purchase or procurement. As we saw already, we have separate part called procurement. How to purchase, from which supplier to purchase, that and all will come under the procurement. The handling of the material will come under inbound logistics. This is very, very important. It may be asked in MCQ. The next thing is, here they have given an example for Indian sugar mills in the states of UP, Maharashtra and Karnataka. They have low inbound logistics cost for these industries. Why? Because within the state itself, they are producing the sugar cane in a very large manner. 80% of the national sugar cane production comes from these states. So they are producing the raw material, sugarcane within the state, and then in that state itself, they have a lot of industries, sugarcane industry. So there is no lot of transportation cost. They can transport it within the state itself. Next thing is operations. They are transforming the raw material into finished goods. That is the meaning of operation. You can have a lot of activities in this operation itself. In producing itself, they will have a lot of process and a lot of stages. If you want, you can outsource some of the process to outside people. If you are doing a business, there will be 2 types of activities in your business. One will be the core activities, another will be the non-core activities. For example, producing will be the core activity, but non-core activity is some kind of call center, customer care. This and all will be non-core activity. This non-core activity, there will be people who are doing it for a cheaper cost outside the business. Now, currently you are doing a non-core activity also, but you can assign the responsibility to another outside third-party firm, and then you can focus only on the core activity. This will help you to create more improvement in the production and reduce the cost of production. Like that, you can focus more on the core activity. You can delegate the non-core activity to a third-party firm. You can do it based on a contract. It will be cheaper also. So that is what they are saying. In Apple Incorporation, the mobile phone manufacturer, Apple, it will design the iPhone. The design for the iPhone will be prepared by the Apple company only. But the manufacturing will be outsourced to China, like China, India, like that. Low cost, third world countries. We have developing countries. There will be cheap labor. And then there will be cost of manufacturing will also be low. The government will also be giving the incentive for opening a manufacturing plant in these countries. So it is an incentive for the company, and then they will outsource the manufacturing to the developing countries. They will just make the design in the America. The next thing is outbound logistics. What is outbound logistics? After production, we will transport the fixed goods to the customer. This transportation, it is called as the outbound logistics. Storing, distributing, and delivering the finished goods to the customer. Amazon, Flipkart, these and all e-commerce websites which are delivering to the customer. That is a part of the outbound logistics. Marketing and sales. As we already know, it is the act of selling the goods to the people. It is based on the marketing mix. What is the marketing mix? It contains 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. What is the product? What is the price you are fixing for a product? What is the place at which you want to sell it? What is the promotion activity you are undertaking? These and all will be coming under the marketing and sales. And then later they added another 3 P's: people, process, and then physical evidence. These are also important for the marketing mix. When you do all these things, you will achieve perfect marketing. The latter 3, people, process, and physical evidence, these 3 are not directly related to the customer, but they are referred to as positioning. By doing these 3, you can position yourself in the market. We will see later about positioning in a detailed manner. The later 3 P's are mostly important for service sector. The product price, place, and promotion. These are for the traditional manufacturing industry. People, process, physical evidence. These are all important for provision of services. When you are a consulting firm like that, people, process, and physical evidence will be more important for you. When customer is the main focal point, you can turn the 4 P's into 4 C's. Consumer want, cost to satisfy, convenience, and then communication. This 4 P you have read: product, price, place, and promotion. This is based on the manufacturing industry, and you are doing it based on traditional method. But nowadays, if you are doing more of a customer-oriented business, customer is the most important thing in your business. You can change it into customer-oriented things. Consumer wants will be 1. Cost to satisfy the want will be 2. Convenience will be the 3rd one. Communication to the customer will be the 4th one. This will be the replacement for the product, place, and promotion in the traditional marketing mix. They have given an example also for modifying the marketing mix. When we have to modify the marketing mix, a chain of restaurants, a fast food restaurant chain, when it entered India, it wanted to change its marketing mix. They changed the chicken patties to aloo tikkis. They changed it to potatoes because in India there's a considerable amount of vegetarian population, so they have to cater the demand of that population also. So they changed the chicken patties to aloo tikkis, and then they reduced the price. They made a promotional campaign and all. This and all, they are modifying the marketing mix according to the region, place. The next thing is after sales service. After selling the product, we have to install it. Training we have to give. Repair. Training means we are educating the customer on how to use the product. Repair means we have to repair the product in case of any problem. This is very, very important in case of durable product like fridge, washing machine. The after sales service is very, very important. So that is what we already saw in car industry also. Service station network is very, very important. That is one more activity of after sales service, which is the primary activities. Now, what are the primary activities? First thing is inbound logistics. The second thing is operations. Third one is outbound logistics. In inbound logistics, we will be providing the raw material to the warehouse. Operation, we will be transforming it into output. Outbound logistics, we will be sending the finished goods to the customer. After that, we will do marketing and sales for the products. And then we will have after sales service also. Service will be the 5th part. This is the primary activities. The next thing is support activities. Firm infrastructure. We will be seeing the legal, general management, administrative, all the other things will be coming under firm infrastructure. We have the transportation in the logistics part. We have the transportation in the operations part. We have the marketing and sales. We have a separate part. After sales also, we have a separate part. Finance, accounting, this and all not covered in any of the above. This and all will come under the firm infrastructure. This will help in quality assurance. Quality assurance, that is also a department which will come under the firm infrastructure. The next thing is technology development. Developing technology, that is also not separately covered. So we will be keeping it under the support activity. The earlier 5 activity which we saw, that is the main primary activity. This and all will be supporting it, and it will help the business to achieve the overall goal. But this is not the main thing. Main thing is about the 5 activities. How we will be using technology, what is the IT team we are using, what is the cyber security we are having, everything will be on the technology part. human resource management. We need to appoint employees also. That is called as human capital. And managing the employees is called as human resource management. We have to recruit the staff. We have to give training to them. We have to build the employee on an overall manner. We have to give the training to them. That and all will be coming under human resource management. The next thing is procurement. Now in procurement, we have to purchase the material. Other than material, we have to find the vendor. We have to negotiate the price. Everything will be coming under the procurement head only. Now what is the analysis of value chain? We are finding the key value driver. What are the most important value providing activities out of this primary and support activities that we have to find out. And then we have to find out the activities which are non-value added, which are not adding any value to the customer, which are not useful to the customer. That also we have to prepare a separate category of activities. When you eliminate these non-value-added activities, you will reduce the cost. That will result in a cost leadership strategy. You will be providing the finished goods to a very low cost to the consumer. And then, when you focus more on value-added activity, what will happen? You will develop a strength. You will develop a unique product. People will buy your product only for your uniqueness. That will be called as a product differentiation strategy. You will have a unique product. Based on that, you will achieve more sales. That is called as product differentiation strategy. Now we saw two strategy. One is the low cost leadership, and the thing is unique product differentiation. In this two, you have to select at least one, and then you have to do this all the activities according to the particular strategy. That is called as a competitive advantage. You should have any one advantage. Either you should be able to sell at low cost, or you should be able to make your product unique. Any one advantage you should take. Value chain analysis, for doing that you need to do three separate analysis. You can do it on an average. On a whole itself you cannot do. You have to divide it into three subparts, and you have to analyze separately, because we have to find out the non-valued activity and then the value-added activity. For that, first thing is we want the information. For obtaining that information, you have to do this analysis. Industry structure analysis. You have to analyze the overall industry. What is the profitability there on the basis of competition. In this industry analysis, we have to also consider the competition in the industry. How much firms are there to make a competition with us? Core competency analysis. What is the unique feature that our company has? How we can take advantage of it in the sales and consumer market? That we have to find out. Segmentation analysis. We have to divide the market. We have to see the target segment. We have to divide the market like a high budget segment, mid-range segment, and then low budget segment. In these three segments, which segment you are targeting, and then for targeting that particular segment, what are the expectation of the customer in that segment? Like that, you have to do those segmentation analysis. That also you have to do. We will be seeing all these three in detail in the chapter itself. Now the next thing is value shop model. What we have in the value shop model is that now we already saw the value chain model. That is for the manufacturing industry, because mainly it is talking about procurement, logistics, everything. But when you operate a service organization, there is no thing of procurement. You don't need to buy any material. You don't need to transport it. Everything will be top to bottom. It will be changed. So we have a separate model called value shop model for service organization. Here the main things are problem finding and acquisition. We are solving the problem of the customer. That is the main thing here. And then we are finding the problem first, and then solving the problem. After that, we have to make a choice between the alternative. For solving problems, so we can do it in three different types. We have to select an alternative which has the lowest cost and it will be most suitable for the customer. That we have to choose. After that, we have to implement the alternative. And then we have to check for monitoring and evaluation, whether it is working properly or not. That we have to check. For support activities, we have the same things. Infrastructure, human resource management, technology, procurement, this and all same thing. But the main thing, inbound logistics, outbound logistics, marketing and sales, that is transformed into problem-related discussion. For that, they have given a concept inside. Value shop model, which person created it, and then which year it was created, how it is doing, that all they have given here. The value shop model is oriented to mobilize the resource and then to solve the problem by the service sector firm. They will take out all the resources, man, machine, money, knowledge, every resource they will gather, and then using that they will solve the problem of the customer. The main activities, as we already saw, problem finding, problem solving, execution, control, choice, evaluation, everything is there. There is no fixed sequence. For every customer, there will be a distinct problem. So we have to use the same approach, but we can change the sequence. In value shop model, as we already saw, there will be management consultancy, service sector firms who are providing service to the customer. The organization will have more information about the client. When we will have more information, we are competing with our competitor. Why we have to compete with that? We have to achieve more profit. In the market, we have a large number of industries. Now, when competing, how we can perform more than the competitor, how we can be better than the competitor is that we have to have more information about the client. And then we have to have specialization. We have to have experience about the particular field or the particular problem. Strong expertise. We need experts from the industry. People should be experienced. For a professional services firm, value shop model is the relevant thing. The strategic positioning analysis. As we already saw, we'll be seeing what is the strategic positioning. It is the position of the firm in the external environment. We will also consider the core competence, expectation, internal resource, everything we will consider, and then we will make the positioning in the market. It is the company's relative position in the strategic segment of the industry. In the industry entire market, we have to position ourselves. How it is performing in comparison to the competitors, that we will see here. For example, Tata Motors performance will be analyzed when comparing to Maruti, Toyota, other companies' performance, which are in the same industry. it will affect the kind of value we are providing to the customer. How value will be created differently than rival. Every company will have a different model for creating the revenue. For revenue generation, they will have different methods that we will compare. If you have a different positioning, and you can do two types of things with that. One thing is that you can charge a lower price for the consumer, and then you can do a cost leadership strategy. Or else, if your positioning is in some other place, you can charge a premium price. Your product will be unique. You can charge a premium price by you doing the product differentiation. Now, this box we will be seeing later. This will be also repeating in some other topics, so we will be seeing it like there. And then we will be doing a study of these things in the strategic positioning analysis. Culture, belief of organization, stakeholder expectation, task environment in the context of capability. What is the capability of the company? Environment, external environment also you will be seeing. First thing is culture, belief, assumption. We will be seeing the vision and value of our company, of our organization. What is the meaning of culture? Is that belief, value, mindset, and practice of a specific group of people. That is the meaning of culture. It also includes the behavioral pattern and norms. What is the ethical practices we are doing? Everything will be coming under the culture, vision, and values. Now we will be seeing an example for strategic positioning analysis. This is an example for positioning. Here, if you can see value or differentiation. If you do high differentiation, you can charge a premium price. It will be a premium brand. Example Toyota. And then if you charge a high cost, you are charging a high cost, but the value you are providing that is not that much high. So you are trying to balance these two. This will be Hyundai. Like that, I have given some example. I have created this just to make you understand that we will be positioning ourselves. What is the meaning of positioning? In this entire graph of the market, we are positioning ourselves based on the differentiation and the price we are providing. That's all. This is just a mere illustration. No need to analyze it this much. The next point we are going to see is stakeholder influence and the expectation. What is the meaning of stakeholder? Customer, supplier, and then shareholder, board of directors, everyone who is related to our company, who are the well-wishers of our company, they will be coming under the stakeholder. We have to consider what the stakeholder wants and what is our mission and objective. That also we should consider when we are doing the analysis. We are doing all this to position ourselves in the market. Based on all this only, we have to create our position in the market. Now the next thing is, here we have a Mendelow's matrix and response for each class of stakeholder. We have different stakeholders. We have government, shareholder, business magazines, employees. These are all the different kind of stakeholders that are interested in our company. Here we can rank it based on the power and interest. Power means how much they can influence our company. Interest means how much they are concerned about our company. If it is a high interest, they will be affected more by our company. If it is high power, they can easily make big changes in our company. Now we have to see the power interest matrix. First one is high power. When a person has high power and he also has high interest, he has the most interest, he also has the highest power. What is the meaning of that? They are the key player. They are the most important one. Example, shareholders. We have to manage them closely. Each and every step we have to take as per their preferences only. Now we have next category, high power. They have very high power, but they have low interest. They do not have much concern about our company. That is the example of influential persons. We can take government as an example. They have high power. If we act against the country or act against the law, they can easily shut down our company, or they can easily stop the operations of the company. They have high power, but they have low interest in our company. They are not that much concerned about our well-being. That is the power of the government. Next thing is low power and low interest. They have low power and low interest also. They are not that much of a problem to the company. Example, business magazine. They are marginal player. You need to put only minimum effort. No need to focus on them. The next thing is high interest but low power. High interest means they are very much affected by our company, but they have only low power. Example, employees. They are the ones who are affected by each and every decision of the organization. No, they have given what we have to do for each of the stakeholder. For government, we have to keep them satisfied. We should not do anything against the government. For shareholder, we have to do each and every step according to the decision of the shareholder. For a marginal player, business magazine, no need to do any effort and all. For employees, we have to keep them informed. Whatever the development, we have to inform it to them. That's all about the Mendelow's matrix. This why we are doing this. That we are doing this to understand the stakeholders' expectation. What are the different people concerned with our company? What they are thinking. That is what we are analyzing here. Next thing is strategic capability. We have to see the capability of our company. What is the strength of the company? What is the weakness of the company? We will do SWOT analysis. In this, first two things will be coming under the capability. Opportunities and threat, it will be coming from the external environment. That is not within the control of the company. So first two things will be coming under the capability. We have to use the strength and use the opportunity. And then we have to reduce the weakness. The next thing is macro environment, the external environment that will contain the opportunity and threat as we saw. Opportunity, we should exploit the opportunity. And then we have to reduce the threat. For that, we have to use risk management committee and all. Because by doing that, we will get the benefit of competitive advantage. Now, the next thing we are going to see is cost driver analysis. We already saw we need to do value chain analysis, cost driver analysis, strategic positioning analysis. Value chain analysis, we already saw. Cost driver, we are going to see. Strategic positioning, we saw just now. Cost driver analysis. What is cost driver analysis? We already know when you solve the sums, you will know what is the activity based costing concept. Now, what we will do in this, we will identify various activities which will be the cost driver, and then the cost which are incurred. That also you will see. Now, for example, we can take the total inspection cost in our company. The total inspection cost is 1 lakh rupees. And in a particular year, we made a total of number of inspection will be 100. Now, what is the cost per inspection? The cost per inspection will be 1000 rupees. Now, this is the cost per inspection. And when we solve the sums, we can see that this will be called as the cost driver rate, 1000 rupees per inspection. And then this will be called as the number of cost driver used. Here in cost driver analysis, what we will be doing is that we will be seeing what is the inspection, why we are doing the inspection, can we reduce the number of inspection, whether it is important for our organization, whether doing it ourselves is profitable or outsourcing it to the other person, third party, whether that is giving us more profit. That and all we will analyze. Monetary effect of the cost driver, the monetary amount, financial analysis we will be doing here. Based upon the nature of the supporting cost, inspection cost, delivering cost, like that, the name is there. They have the different nature also. You will classify it into many categories. One is resource driver, another is activity driver. In activities driver, there are different activities, like inspection is an activity, delivery is an activity, like that we have different activities. They are further divided into two types. One is operational, and another is organizational. In organization also, we have structural and then executional. Now, what is structural activity and driver? Structural driver, what is the meaning of that? It is the cost driver which depends on the underlying economic structure, such as the scale and scope of the operation, how much big level you are doing the operation, whether you are doing it on a very big level or you are just a small to medium sized company, how much you are using the technology, what is the complexity of the product, whether you are manufacturing a very complex and sophisticated product or a product is fairly simple. That will be coming into the structural cost driver. We will be analyzing all these factors when analyzing the structural cost driver. When you see the executional cost driver, we will see the provision of quality of service. How much quality you are giving in the service. What is the design of the product? What is the manufacturing method you are using? How much of a relationship you have with client and suppliers? This and all are the executional cost driver. Now here they have given two important points. For structural cost driver, it is not necessary that the more is better. If the structural cost driver are more, it is not necessary that it should be good for the company. For example, if you take complexity, if the products are very complex, it is not good for the company. But when you take technology, when it is the business is using a very high amount of technology, it is good for the company. But when you see executional cost driver, everything is positive. Quality, designing, relationship with supplier. If all these are in a very high manner, it is good for the company. Higher is the better. That is the one thing about structural and executional cost driver. Now, we have to see the annexure 1 at the end of the chapter for a detailed overview of the types of cost driver. The structured, executional, for everything I have given detailed examples and then list also at the end of this chapter. As you can see, this is the annexure given at the end of the chapter. We have to see the nature of the cost and we have to divide it into the different activities and the different types of drivers. Structural cost drivers, as I already said, we will be analyzing the scale of the company, scope of the company and all. For these factors, we have given the detailed explanation also. Now, executional cost drivers also, they have given the explanation for each and every factor. Now, examples also they have given. As we already saw, for inspection, the cost driver will be number of inspection. Like that, for plant construction, the cost driver will be number of plant. Employee grouping, the cost driver will be number of work units. Like that, they have given different cost driver and all for each and every activity. This is not that much important. You can just go through it once. Just give a plain reading. That's all. Now, operational activity and cost driver that we saw in the example, right? The inspection and the number of inspection. That is actually operational cost driver. This is relating to the actual operation of the entity, not relating to quality or the scale of operation. That and all is not concerned. That and all relating to the planning phase. This is the actual operation which we are doing. Like equipment setup will be allocated based on number of setup. The reworking cost of the product will be based on number of defective units. And then product testing will be based on number of procedures. Like that, the cost for the particular activity will be allocated based on the number of procedures. That is the meaning here. Now we can move to the next concept. Now we are going to see about the tools of strategic cost management. In strategic cost management, what are the tools that we have? Activity-based costing, as we already saw, we can allocate the cost based on the number of cost driver used, number of inspection, number of procedure, like that. And then benchmarking. We can use the standard costing and benchmarking and all for a strategic cost management. Competitive advantage analysis we can do. Just-in-time also we can implement. Kaizen we can implement. Target costing is another tool. Theory of constraints, total quality management, value chain analysis. These are all the different tools which we are using in the strategic cost management. This you will not be understanding in an in-depth manner now. We will be seeing all the things in upcoming chapters. You will be understanding them in an in-depth manner in the upcoming chapters. So you need not stress more on these different tools now. For now, we can just learn the names of that. We have different types of tools, that's all. Now we can see the difference between traditional and strategic cost management. In traditional cost management, we will allocate the cost based on the number of units produced. Here we will be doing based on the number of activities, the inspection cost, delivery cost, based on number of inspection and number of deliveries. Nature. Traditional will be reactive. The strategic cost management will be proactive. We will be doing more proactive approach. We will be predicting and doing more important things. We will not react after the problem arises. Objective is to cost control and cost reduction. Here we have to attain a competitive advantage, either cost leadership or product differentiation. That also we will do, and we will also focus on the cost containment also. Risk appetite. Traditional cost management will be risk averse approach. We should reduce the risk. That will be the main motive in the traditional cost management. In strategic cost management, we have to take calculated risk, and we have to take the risk and adapt to the environment. Scope, internal business environment. We can use the traditional method only within the business, but in strategic cost management, we are considering the market, everything. We can use it in both internal and external places. Term traditional will be based on short-term focus. Strategic cost management will have a long-term focus. This is the difference. Now we'll be seeing the organizational context. In our particular organization, how we can use the strategic cost management. Now we have completed the traditional versus strategic cost management difference. Now till now what we completed, we saw about the strategic cost management basic pillars. If you see here, in the beginning we saw that we have three pillars in strategic cost management. Strategic cost management, we saw what is the concept. After that, we saw there are three pillars in that. One is the value chain analysis, another one is the strategic positioning analysis, another one is the cost driver analysis. These three we saw in detail. Now what is value chain analysis? We divided the activities into primary activities and secondary activities, and then from these activities we are analyzing each and every one. Now whether where we can improve, where we can reduce the process, where you can reduce the cost, where you can introduce differentiation, everything we are seeing in each and every activity. How we can do the activity better, but with a lower cost. We are not compromising on quality, but at the same time we are reducing the cost. Next thing is strategic positioning analysis. This also we saw. We saw four main things in it. One is the culture, belief, values. This is based on the vision and mission of the company. It is also based on the culture of the company. What is the culture? We saw that the underlying principles, philosophy of the management of the entire company, it will be the culture. We saw the stakeholder expectation. We saw the different types of stakeholders. High power, high interest, shareholders. High power, low interest, government. Low power, high interest, employees. Low power, low interest, we will have the business magazines and all. We have to give the maximum effort to the high power, high interest. Like that, we saw the Mendelow's matrix, power, interest matrix. That we saw in the stakeholder expectation. After that, we saw the capability, which are inside the company, strength and weakness. That is the capability of the company. And then external environment, opportunity and threat. We have to use the opportunity, eliminate the threat. We have to improve the strength, reduce the weakness. That's what we saw in strategic positioning analysis. By doing all this, we will position our company in a graph. The graph which I showed earlier. Next thing is cost driver analysis. We will analyze the different cost drivers and the related activity cost. Example, inspection cost, delivery cost, like that. In this, we will use the activity-based costing. We will allocate the overhead cost based on the activities and the cost driver used. Next thing is we have different types of cost drivers, structural cost driver, and then executional cost driver, operational cost driver. That and all we saw. Now, one thing in structural cost driver is that if you see the factors here, scale, scope, experience, everything, this is based on the economic structure of the organization. For example, what is the structure of an organization? How much machine they are using? How much scale they are operating? What is the technology they are using? What is the complexity of their product? These and all will be coming under the structure of the organization. The basic structure upon which the organization is built. That activities will be coming under the structural cost driver. But when you see the executional cost driver, we will be seeing how we are using the structure to provide value to the customer. Now, like here if you see how much we are utilizing the employee, what is the quality of the service we are providing, how much properly we are designing, what is the efficiency with which we are manufacturing, everything will be in the executional cost driver. Structure is the economic resources in one type, you can see it. That is the economic resources and structure, and then execution is how you are using it to provide value. Third thing is activity. Operational cost driver is day-to-day activity you are doing. You are doing inspection, you are doing manufacturing, you are doing setup, you are doing rework. For that, how much you are incurring the cost driver, how to allocate it. That will be the operational cost driver. That is the basic logic of the dividing the category between the cost drivers. Now we completed the basic pillars of strategic cost management. Till now what we saw, what is traditional cost management, what is the limitation of traditional cost management, what is the introduction of strategic cost management, what are the basic pillars of strategic cost management. In the main concept, if you see, we have covered some three concepts. One is the value chain analysis, another is the strategic positioning analysis, another one is the Mendelow's matrix. That also we covered. Now we are going to see the next topic. Now, one more thing is, before moving into the next concept, I want to tell, we are seeing three concepts, right? Value chain analysis, strategic positioning analysis, cost driver analysis. We know the individual concepts separately, but why we have to link all this is that is what we are going to do in various chapters. We are going to improve the value chain. We are going to position ourselves in the market. We are going to analyze the cost driver using activity-based costing. We have to take decisions relating to that. This whole thing only we are going to use it in different chapters. So, if you want to understand this entire thing as a whole, you will be understanding what is the essence of the subject. That is why I am linking these three and telling you. The next thing is organizational context. How we can use the strategic cost management for our particular organization. That is what we are going to see. We have to collect the cost data. Using that, we have to do the strategy, and then we have to achieve a competitive advantage. That is the main thing here. First one is the data. With the data, you have to do the strategy. After doing the strategy, you have to implement it. By doing that, you will get to the competitive advantage. What is the meaning of competitive advantage? That is what we are going to see here. Advantage means you are having something better than the opposite person. That is the meaning of advantage. Competitive advantage means you have a competitor, you are doing better than the competitor, outperforming the competitor. You will be making more profit. Why you are making more profit? Because of superior performance. You are performing very well. The role of the strategist is that to engineer the superior performance. You have to make the company to perform very superior level. That is what you have to do. You have to ensure that the company performs in a superior level than the competitor. marketer. How can a strategist do this? He will have to choose any one of the strategy and you have to work on the strategy. By using that work, you will increase the profitability. What are the two strategies? As we already saw, one is differentiation, unique product mechanism. Another thing is cost leadership, low cost mechanism. These are the two options that you have. These are called as the generic strategies. Overall generic strategy which you are using to enhance the profitability. This was also created by Michael Porter. That is why I wrote in the concept list that it was Michael Porter's generic strategies. Now, next thing is we are seeing in one by one. Differentiation, unique product. When you have very unique product, the customer will be ready to pay a very high amount also. It will be providing a distinctive value. It will be providing a unique value to the customer. Therefore, you can drive up the prices. You can set the prices at a high level. Now, example is Apple. Apple company uses product differentiation as their main marketing strategy. Even when they release a new iPhone, it will be very unique when compared to the other Android phones or the other mobile phones in the market. That is the product differentiation they are offering. For achieving that differentiation, they are doing a lot of expenditure in research and development. Marketing also they are doing in a very high manner. That also we can see here. Fourth, how we can do the differentiation? You can increase the quality. You can do innovation, doing something which is out of the world. Next thing is wide product range. You can have a wide list of product. You can give a lot of options to the customer. That is also one type of differentiation. What is the benefit you are getting? You can get a huge margin. You can increase the price and then you can get a huge margin. Or else if you charge the less than premium price, what will happen itself? You are providing high value with a low price, lower than the market price. Now what you will do? You will get a high market share. Many customer will buy it because not only you are charging less than premium price, you are also providing the equal of value, differentiation value you are providing. So you will have a higher market share. When you have a higher price, only some customer will buy, but you will get a huge margin. Percentage of profit will be higher. But when you charge a lower price, less than premium price, not at the very low level like cost leadership, you are charging a price, but it's less than premium price. For example, you can charge 1,000 rupees. That is the premium price, but you are charging 900 rupees. This is less than premium. So that is the concept here. When you charge less than premium, many customer will buy because they are getting a lot of value. They are paying only less than premium. You will get a high market share. For example, total 100 units they are selling in the market. Customer will buy 80 units from yourself. Your company will provide 80% of the market share. That will be the main thing. Market share is also a very important thing for the companies. Next strategy is cost leadership. First one, differentiation, unique product mechanism. Second thing is low cost mechanism, driving down cost. Sales minus cost equals profit. When you increase the sales price or the sales quantity, sales market share, you will get an increase in the profit. When you reduce the cost also, you will get the increase in the profit. These are the two methods, two strategies used to enhance the profitability. So when you can reduce the cost, you have to give acceptable quality, not compromise very much on quality. You have to give a minimum quality, but you have to give it at a low cost. So you have to use cost-effective inputs. Raw material you are using, use cheaper raw material. Process innovation. You have to re-engineer the process, modify the process so that you get very least cost. And then re-engineering. You can modify the process. Economics of scale. When you do at a very high level of high scale you are operating. You are producing 1 lakh units. If you do this much units, you will get a fixed cost per unit at a very low level. For example, you are getting 10 lakh fixed cost. This will be same for a particular level of capacity. So when you produce 10,000 units with fixed cost, what will be the fixed cost per unit? Fixed cost per unit will be 100 rupees. But at the same time, when you produce 1 lakh units, what will be the fixed cost per unit? You will get 10 rupees fixed cost per unit. So this is the difference in the fixed cost per unit. You are getting less cost per unit. So when you are doing high scale, you will get the lowest cost per unit. By this, you can sell a lower selling price. Selling price is also per unit. You can keep a lower selling price and you can capture the market share because many people will buy from you when you are charging a very lower price. Cost leadership, what you have to do? You have to reduce the cost of individual value chain activities. We already saw the value chain activities like inbound logistics, outbound logistics, marketing and sales. In each of the activity, you have to reduce the cost. After reducing, you will reduce the overall cost also. You have to reconfigure the value chain. You have to make necessary changes in the chain of the value. By doing all this, you can reduce the cost and then you can achieve the cost leadership strategy. The next thing is strategies and cost management. What is the relation between these two? Here you can see we have different strategies. For each strategy, what is the important point? What is the point and how it is important for any strategy? Now here if you see, the first point is that as role of the standard cost in assessing the performance. Standard costing you should have studied in CA Inter, or else if you see the marathon video, I have explained it in detail. First you have to see the sums marathon, after that you have to complete the theory marathon. Then only it will be beneficial for you. I will be explaining the little bit of concepts in the sum marathon. With that concept introduction, if you come here, you will be understanding in a better manner. Now what is the role of standard costing? Whether standard costing is important, they are asking. Here this is related to the cost. In product differentiation, we are providing unique value. So we are not concerned about the cost. We are not focusing on the reduction of cost. So standard costing is not that much important in product differentiation. But when you see the cost leadership strategy, the main motive is to reduce the cost. So here standard costing is very important. We will be comparing budget with actual and we have to find out the difference in cost because we have to reduce the cost to a low level. Next thing is importance of flexible budgeting. Budgeting and all we have to do to reduce the cost. We have to do the budget because we do not want to spend an very high amount on the cost, so that we are spending within the budget. That is the important. Flexible budget is very important for cost, but not important for product differentiation. For cost leadership, flexible budgeting is important, high importance. But for product differentiation, we have low importance. Same thing, meeting the budget. That is also not important for product differentiation. High importance for cost leadership. Marketing cost analysis. Cost analysis is not less important for cost leadership. Why? Because it is the marketing cost. We should not do that much marketing cost on cost leadership. We have to reduce the cost, so we will not be spending that much on marketing. But when you do product differentiation, the innovation, different value, and then the marketing also plays an important role in your promotion. So it is very important, critical factor to your success. Next thing is importance of product cost as an input to product pricing decisions. In differentiation, you will set the selling price based on the value you are providing to the customer, based on the uniqueness of your product. But in cost leadership, the base for selling price is cost. You will keep cost plus profit percentage to arrive at the selling price. So product cost is important here, not important in product differentiation. And then competitor cost analysis. Cost is not important in differentiation, but it is important in cost leadership. Even competitor's cost also important. The competitive advantage you can do from any one of the manner, cost leadership or the product differentiation. So now what is the thing is that how you have to conduct the value chain analysis step by step. That is one more thing. We saw value chain analysis is one part, cost driver analysis is one part, strategic positioning analysis is one part. In this value chain analysis, we saw what are the activities, what is the value chain, how to conduct a step by step value chain analysis we are going to see now. Here the first step is identifying the value chain activities. Identify the separate activities which we saw earlier. Identify the cost and value of the activities. What is the cost incurred for a particular activity? What is the value it is providing for a particular customer? That we have to compare. Another thing is identify opportunities for competitive advantage. How you can change that activity into a competitive advantage. How to change it? For example, if you are incurring high cost for inbound logistics and it is not providing that much value to the customer, you have to try to reduce the cost. You are using the cost leadership advantage. And then when you are doing expense for a particular activity and it is providing high value to the customer, you have to do more expense on it. You have to do the product differentiation. Because of that, customer will get high value. You can charge the selling price higher. By this way, you can use the cost leadership and product differentiation advantages. Identifying the activities. Identify the primary and secondary activities. If you have multiple products, do this value chain for each and every product. For every product, you have to have a separate value chain. Each and every activity categorized for separate products also you have to do it. Identify the cost and value of the activities. What is the value it is adding to the customer? What is the cost we are incurring? Now we have to have the questions in mind when you are comparing the value. What is value? How it is increasing the user satisfaction? That is one measure of value. How it is creating value for the firm? What is the value created by the activity for the company? That also we have to see. Next thing is to be more specific. This is the generic question. But for more specific, for every activity you can see this. Does constructing a product from certain material make it durable or luxurious for the customer? If you use certain raw material, it will be more beneficial for the customer. Whether it is true or not, that you have to see. Does including a certain feature make it more likely for your firm to benefit from network effects and increased business? If you include a particular feature in your product, will it give increased business and network effect? Will many customers buy your product because of that particular feature? If many customers are buying for that single feature itself, it is a high value process. So you have to categorize it in a high value process. Value adding process. Similarly, it is also important to understand the cost. If you reduce the cost, you can improve the value. You can implement the savings in cost, and then that savings you are getting right, you can invest that amount in another important value which will create value to the customer. The next thing is how to identify the opportunities for competitive advantage. We found out the cost and value for the activity. We categorized the activity. Now, how to use this for attaining competitive advantage? We have to do three things here. We can do it in three ways. First is internal cost analysis, internal differentiation analysis, vertical linkage analysis. Here, we have to see that how we can attain cost leadership or product differentiation using these activities. Internal cost analysis is that you have to understand the cost of each and every activity. You have to identify the value creating process, which are the most important process that is giving value to the customer. What is the total cost percentage we are spending for that particular process? What is the cost driver? For example, we are doing a particular process which is giving high value to the customer. For doing that process, we have a machine. That machine is doing that process. The total cost for that machine will be allocated based on the machine hours. So machine hours is the cost driver. For example, you are using 1000 machine hours. This is the cost driver rate. Cost driver units used. For example, the cost per machine hour is 100. This is the cost driver rate. Like that, you have to identify the cost driver for each process, and you have to separate the high value process also. The link between the process 1, process 2, process 3, what is the linkage between these processes that you have to identify, and whether you can reduce the cost and you can get a cost advantage in any of these processes, that also you should see. What are the important value creating process? How much you are spending for that important process? What is the cost driver of the process? How it is linked to the other process? How you can reduce the cost of that particular process? For example, here they have given an example how we can be more efficient, that we have to find out, and whether we have any unimportant activities, non-core activities which we can outsource and then get the savings and cost in that. Savings in cost will not only increase the profit, it will give us the way to invest more in the value creating process. There will be some process which are important. If you eliminate the non-core process and get a savings in cost in that, you can invest that extra amount in the value creating process. That will also be good for the company. When you see internal differentiation analysis, it will be based on the value perceived by the customer. What is the value of the product in the mind of the customer? For that, you have to see what is the value creating process, what is the most important activity for the customer, what is the differentiation strategy, how you can add uniqueness to the product, how you can provide more value to the customer, what is the best sustainable differentiation strategy. For providing more value to the customer in a particular process itself, you can do 3 or 4 alternative. In that, you have to see what is the alternative which is giving most benefit to the company also, it is giving more value to the customer also. That you have to choose. You can see the best opportunity for differentiation and whether the value created justify the investment of additional resources. For example, if you spend 1 lakh rupees on capital investment for improving a process, for giving more value to the customer, whether you are achieving increased sales because of that value, whether you are getting increased sales, increased profit because of that particular investment, that also you have to see. Now we can see about vertical linkage analysis. Vertical linkage analysis, it is similar to the vertical integration which you could have studied in CA Inter Strategic Management. If you can't remember, I will recap the concept once more. Here what they have given is that we have to create an extendable organization by extending the value chain across the firm of supplier and the user. We have to extend our value chain. Currently what is happening? For example, we can take this as the value chain, entire value chain of reaching the product to our customer. From our raw material supplier till the customer, what is the entire value chain? That is what we are going to see here. Farmers will be the one producing the raw material. For example, we can take cotton. Cotton is our product. Raw material we are taking from farmers. It will be bought by the raw material supplier. The raw material supplier will supply raw cotton to the manufacturer. The manufacturer is our company. We are the manufacturer. We will process it and convert it into finished goods. The finished goods will be sent to the distributor, then to the retailer, then the customer will purchase it from the retail shops. This is the system. Now this is our company. This is our company, and then we can take the same value chain. This is the competitor. This will be the competitor business. Here what we will do is that when you purchase the competitor business, you have a competitor, you are making a purchase consideration to the competitor and buying his whole business. So you will be buying the business of the competitor who is in the same industry. Both of you are manufacturer. When you buy the manufacturer of the manufacturing company of the competitor, it will be called as horizontal integration. Meaning of horizontal integration is that it is like a sleeping line. You are doing a thing like a sleeping line. Manufacturer in the one value chain is buying the business of another manufacturer in another value chain. It is in a manufacturing unit itself. So it is a horizontal integration. But here itself, when you see, you have farmers. Again, we can take these two. And when you buy the raw material supplier business, you are purchasing the business of raw material supplier. Or else in your group of companies itself, you are starting a new company, and then that company will be controlled by your company only. You will purchase the raw material from the farmers using that newly created subsidiary company. That subsidiary company will provide at a low cost to the manufacturer. That is our company. So in this manner, we are saving the cost. We have to do the cost benefit analysis, whether it is profitable or not. That and all we have to see. But doing this thing, it will be called as vertical integration because it is like a standing line. Vertical integration. So what they are saying is that the vertical linkage analysis we have to do. That is what is the meaning is that whether it is profitable to purchase the raw material supplier's business, that we have to see. Whether going vertically, whether it is profitable for the company, that we have to analyze. That is the meaning of vertical linkage analysis. Till now, in a traditional value chain, what we saw, value chain will contain inbound logistics, outbound logistics, primary activity, secondary activity, everything is related to only related to the manufacturer. It is only related to our business. It does not concerned about the raw material supplier or distributor. It is not concerned about that. But that entire value chain which we studied earlier, it was in our manufacturing business itself. Now this vertical linkage analysis, we are thinking about combining our company with the raw material supplier. We are combining in a vertical manner. We are acquiring another business. This is called as vertical linkage analysis. We are doing externally. That is why the first two things will be called as internal cost analysis and then internal differentiation analysis. But the third thing is called as vertical linkage analysis. We are trying to purchase the supplier business. That's all about the vertical linkage analysis. Now we saw step-by-step method to do a value chain analysis, internal cost, internal differentiation, and then vertical linkage. Now we have completed all the main pillars of the strategic cost management. These are the main essence of the subject. So that is why I'm explaining this slowly. Now we can move to the next thing. Now we will be doing this analysis and all after obtaining the information. For obtaining the information, we have to do three things. One is the industry profitability analysis, and then core competency analysis, and then key success factor analysis. This we have to do to obtain the information for value chain analysis. We saw what is value chain analysis, and then what is the step-by-step method, and then for that performing that analysis, we have to obtain the information. Now we have to see the ways of obtaining the information. Now one more thing, if we want to go as per the order of the study material, we have to study the business model. But before that, here we have given an introduction of the three methods to obtain the information. So first we can do the industry information collection methods. After that we can do the business model concept. So first we have to do the industry structure analysis as per the order here. Now, in the industry structure analysis, we have two things. One is the industry profitability analysis. Second thing is the basis of competition. Industry profitability analysis means in an industry, in a sector, for example, mobile phone sector or something, For example, mobile phone sector, we have to take the entire industry, and then in that industry, how much profitability is there, whether it is attractive to enter into business in that segment. That all we should see. And then basis of competition, on what basis we are competing, we are competing with our competitors. What is the basic reason for competition? That and all we will be seeing. First, industry profitability. Now, what is the industry profitability analysis? Now, here what they are saying is that this was created by Michael Porter. He's the one who created the industry profitability analysis. He categorized the profitability attractiveness, whether it is good for the company to enter into the business based on the intensity of the competition. If many people are there, we have to compete against many people. It is difficult for us to achieve the profit. But when there are few competitors, we can. It is relatively easy to enter into the business and shine our business. So, when we have higher competition, it is lower profitability. For that, he has 5 factors in industry competitor from where we will be getting the competition. One thing is that potential entrance. After us entering into the business, new companies will come into the industry. We have to do competition with them. And then substitutes. We will have other people in the market who are selling substitute products, replacement products. The customer can choose our product or the competitor product. We have a substitute. That is one more threat. This is also one more factor which will reduce the sales and profitability. Another thing is bargaining power of buyers. If the buyers have very high power, we will be selling at a lower price. So because the buyers have the price to power to push the price below, they will push the price. So this will result in lower profitability. And then supplier will push the price up. What is the price of raw material? Price of raw material, the supplier will be pushing it upwards. So it will result in higher cost, and then it will result in low profit for the company. This is also one more factor which will affect the profitability of the company. This is the entire industry analysis. We have to consider all these things, and then in the industry competitor, we have to consider one more thing: existing players who are in the market. That also we have to see whether there are already we have a lot of existing firms. Now, whether it is profitable to fight with them. That also we have to see. We can see it one by one. First thing is bargaining power of buyers. If you see about bargaining power of buyers, when it will be high, when we will have a high power with the buyers will have high power when the cost of switching is low, meaning that the buyer can easily switch to the alternative product. There is no particular importance for our product, and then the cost is also low. There is no extra cost which is associated with changing the product. Then few buyer, and then when we have a lot of seller and only few buyers are there, the few buyers will be having a lot of choices. So we cannot put a lot of pressure on the buyer, because he will be easily moving towards the next product if he is not comfortable with our product. Large quantity buyers. If a buyer is purchasing a lot of quantity, bulk quantity from us, he will definitely expect a discount. So it will also reduce the profitability of our company. He will be a very large buyer. For example, if he buys 80% of our product, 80% of our finished goods are sold to one single customer. Now he will have obviously a lot of power over our company. He will demand more discount. He will demand more inspection by our company itself. He will demand more quality product. The power will be basically with the buyer. Next thing is standard product. If it is a very standard product, wherever if the buyer buys, it will be the same quality. There is no particular unique quality which is given by our company. So he can buy from anywhere. The main product which we are selling, it does not affect the quality of the finished goods. For example, the buyer is buying the product, but it is not that much important for the main finished goods which is sold by the buyer. The buyer is also an organization, business organization. He will be doing some manufacturing finished goods and all. He will be selling it to another person. That will be the customer of our customer. That does not affect the quality of the finished goods. Our product, it is not particularly affecting the quality of the finished goods sold by our customer. So it is not that much important. He can easily switch the supplier. Full information. The buyer has a lot of information. He is very knowledgeable and he is demanding discount properly. Then also we cannot exert pressure on the buyer. He will have more power. As a result, what will happen? Low price. We have to keep the selling price to be low, and then we will have a low margin, low profit. The next thing is bargaining power of supplier. When the supplier will have a high power, supplier means raw material supplier. We will be buying the raw material from that supplier only. When there is no alternative. What is the meaning of no alternative? We have only one material. That is the material which should be used in our product. We don't have any other alternative substitute and all. That is a very big factor. If we cannot switch the supplier will have a high power. We cannot change him also. Few suppliers. Only when there are few suppliers in the market, we have to go for this supplier, or there is only one other supplier. We have to choose between these two. So we should be we will not be in a position to demand anything from the supplier. He is the one who is having high power, because only two of the suppliers are there in the entire market. Customer is not important. For example, we have a big supplier organization. We are buying from that supplier. A lot of our industry people are also buying from that same supplier. Now, our organization as a particular customer, we are not giving that much sales to the supplier. So we are not that much important for the supplier organization. Even if we do not buy from the supplier, it will not be a big problem for the supplier. So this will also be another factor. Here, the power will be with the supplier. Next thing is switching cost. If we switch to another product, another raw material, it will be very costly for us. We have to change the production facility, factory layout and all we have to change. Machinery, we have to buy new machinery. This all will be associated with the switching cost. If we change to another material, this cost we have to incur. Then also we will not change the raw material. We will try to stick with the same raw material. Then differentiated product. Then when the supplier raw material, it is of a very high quality. We will not get this much quality anywhere else. Then also it is providing a unique value to us. So we will not switch with the product. this case also, the supplier will have very high power. The result is that bargaining power of buyers, it will increase the price, it will reduce the price of the finished goods. Bargaining power of suppliers, it will increase the price of the raw material. Both results in low profit. Next thing is theory of threat of substitutes. When there is a perfect and cheaper substitute, we have another product which can be used as an alternative for our product. If the customer purchases the other product, it is very perfect for the usage. There is no problem in the usage of that product. Then it is a cheaper substitute also. It will be selling at a lower cost than our product. Then substitute from a different industry. Even if the other product is not from our industry, it is from another industry, but it is working as a proper substitute. Then also it will be a very high threat of substitute. There is a very big danger that the customer will switch to the substitute product. Switching cost or low, same thing. Customer can easily switch the product. There is no cost associated with it. No product differentiation. We are selling a standard product. Then also he will be using a substitute. There will be no importance particularly to our product. Here also the threat of substitute will be high. If they have a very high threat of substitute, it is very dangerous for us to do business because anytime the customer will switch to the substitute. Next thing is threat of new entrant. They will bring new capacity into the industry and then substantial resources. When they are coming itself, they will bring a lot of resources. They will bring this much machinery. They will be able to operate about 1 lakh units, and then in the starting they will give it a lower price. This and all will be a threat to our existing company. This level of threat, it is based on the barriers to entry and the reaction of the existing players. Barriers to entry means how much of a difficulty or obstacle a person has when entering into an industry. In our industry, if a person has to come, there is a lot of problems. We have to counter all the problems. After that, only we can start an organization in our industry. Then we can say that there is a high entry barrier. If there is a high entry barrier, we will have no threat of new entrant because only some people will be able to counter the barriers and then come into the market itself. When coming into the market itself is a big problem, no, it is nowhere a threat to our existing organization. We have an established market. Next thing is reaction of existing players. When a new person comes, what is the reaction of the existing players? Whether they are accepting it or they are fighting the new entrant, everything is important. If all the existing players fight against the new entrant, it will be very difficult for the new entrant to survive. So in that case, the threat of new entrant will be low. Barriers to entry, economies of scale. What are the barriers to entry? What are the obstacles which we can keep from avoiding new people to entering into the market? One is the economies of scale. When we are producing at a large scale, we will get lower fixed cost per unit. So we will have lower cost per unit and then we will have higher profit per unit. This is one more thing. When a new entrant is coming, he cannot produce in large capacity in the starting itself because he will have to do a high capital investment and all. If we do that much capital investment, there is a risk factor also because we are already in the market. If a new company comes, if he does that much investment, whether he will be able to generate the return or not properly, because he also has to borrow the funds or raise the funds through equity, and then only he will invest it. So he will take into account the risk of the industry. Economies of scale is important. Then capital requirement. For example, if you are starting an airlines business, there will be a lot of capital requirement. You have to buy license, you have to get license from the government, you have to buy airplanes, and then for airplanes and all, it will be very costly. You need a very high amount of capital. If the high amount of investment is required, only some people will be coming. Then we will have low threat of new entrant. Government policy is another thing. Switching cost. If we have a high switching cost, we need not to cover we need not be concerned about any other persons because anyway the customer will not leave us because if he switches to another product, there will be high switching cost will be incurred by the customer. Next thing is product differentiation. When we sell a unique product also, we need not to think about other people. Anyway, our customer will be with us only because we are providing unique value. Access to distribution channel. For example, when we have distributors, retailer, everything and all, this channel of network will be for our exclusive company. And then like that, each company in the existing players, they will have an exclusive distribution network. This distribution network will not distribute the product of the new entrant. That is one more policy which will be in the competition. They should be doing the business between themselves, and then the cartel. It will be in the formation of in the form of a cartel. Cartel means many suppliers or many organizations will come together and they will fight against the new entrant. They will not leave any new entrant, but at the same time they will be fighting between themselves also. When a new entrant comes, all the members of the cartel will be fighting against the new entrant. So in that way, they will not give access to the distribution channel. If the new entrant is unable to distribute the product, he will not get sales and he will automatically get away from the industry. Next thing is rivalry among the existing firms. Existing firms in the market itself, whether there are a lot of firms and there is a lot of rivalry going on. The existing people are already fighting to death among themselves. So it is a very big problem for the industry attractiveness. If there are already a lot of people, we have to, if we are going in as a new person, we have to fight with all of them. So it will be a very big problem for us. It is a very big risk. We cannot take that risk. So competitive efforts versus retaliation. For example, if we are going in as a new company and we are doing some effort, we will get reaction also from all the existing firms. And then these existing firms will do the action versus reaction between themselves also. We will have to fight a lot of people. Escalated situations, all firms will suffer. If there is a very high competition, there will be a price war. There will be a competition which person is selling at the lowest price. If that competition comes, we have to reduce our cost and we will get no profit. That is one more problem. Intense competition. When there is a very high competition, we will have low profitability and market share. How this market share works is that, for example, the total demand is 1 lakh units. We have total 10 firms in the market. So on an average, a firm will have 10,000 units sales. But when we have 100 firms in the market, in this existing industry itself, totally 1 lakh is the total demand. But we have 100 supplying firms in the market. But now what will be the sales per firm? 1000 units. This also we are calculating on an average. But this will be changing based on the marketing and other factors which is being done by the particular business. So when we have intense competition, more number of firms, our sales will reduce. That is also a problem. And then intense competition, when we will have high level of competition, there's a lot of firms in the business, extra capacity is there, high fixed cost is there, homogeneous products, there is no particular unique value to the customer, high exit barriers. Even if we enter the industry, it is very difficult for us to exit. For example, in telecom industry and all, then there is a company, they will have a lot of equipment and all. This equipment, it will be specialized for telecom industry. We can use it only for telecom purpose. No other purpose can be achieved with that particular equipment. Now, when we have 3 to 4 companies alone in the telecom sector, if we want to exit, we have to sell this equipment to any other person. Who will buy this equipment? It is a specialized equipment for telecom purpose. Only the other competitors, 4 or 5 people who are in the market, they only will have to buy. Those are our competitors, our enemies. They will try to buy the equipment at a very, very cheap cost, and we won't be able to recover our capital itself. So it is a very bad thing for exit. We will not be able to exit the industry. Anyhow, we have to remain in the industry. Even if we try to exit, we will not be able to get our own capital also back. That is one more problem of exit barrier. With all these factors, we have to consider the rivalry among the existing firms. If all these things happen, and then if we have low adverse pressure from all these places, every place we have an adverse pressure. Buyer also forcing us, supplier also forcing us, substitute also usually available. The new entrant also, it will be very easy for them to come. We have already a lot of firms in competition. This will reduce the industry attractiveness. It will be a risk for entering into the industry, and then nobody will come to that industry to start a business. So this is what will be done under the industry profitability analysis. What is the profitability attractiveness of the industry? That is what we are finding out. This is also called as Michael Porter's 5 forces analysis. Basically, here we have 5 forces: buyers, suppliers, substitutes, new entrants, and existing firms. We are getting pressure from all these 5 sides. So we have to manage it. That is the main model of the Porter's 5 force model. That's all about the industry profitability analysis. Here they have given examples also. You can read it afterwards. I have already explained it through examples by myself. The next thing is barriers and profitability they are saying. When we have high exit barriers and high entry barriers, what will happen? That is what we have to see here. Same like the Mendelow's matrix, but here we have different factors. Here if you can see, when we have low entry barrier is very low. What will happen? Everyone will come to the industry. We will have many players in the existing market. What we already found the example that when we have a lot of firms in the existing market, we will get a low sales. Low sales equals low profit. So we will get low returns. Just focus on the returns. Low returns we will get when there are a lot of persons in the industry, when the entry barrier is low. But when the entry barrier is high, it will be a very difficult thing for the people to start the business itself. So there will be few players in the market. So anyway, the market demand should be satisfied by the 2 or 3 players who are in the market. So we will get a high return. Anyway, the customer has to come to either our firm or the competitor firm to buy the product. We have a high demand in the market, but only few suppliers are there. We are the supplier organization. Here we will have a high returns. And then when you see the exit barriers, as I already said, when the exit barriers are high, it will be a risk for the organization. We cannot move out of the industry even if we want to. So it is a very big risk. Next thing is, when the exit barrier is low, we can easily go out of the industry. There is no risk. We have stability in the market. Even if things go sideways, we can easily exit the market and recover our capital. Exit barriers are high. It is a risk for the organization. We cannot sell our equipment. So we cannot exit. The returns will be risky. We will have risk along with the returns. We will get returns. Along with the returns, we will get the risk attached. Because we are operating in a risky industry. We cannot exit. When the exit barriers are low, what will happen is that we can exit easily. We have a stable returns. There is no risk, meaning that we have stable returns. So that is the logic of low stable returns, low risky returns, high stable returns, high risky returns. When they ask questions about this in the exam also, you can easily draw the graph using the logic, and then you can find the answer. Here, if you see the graph, here we have the graph. I will draw the box, and then in the top corner, we can write that we have exit barrier. Here we can write the entry barrier. And then we have high exit barrier, low exit barrier. And then we have high entry barrier, low entry barrier. When the exit barrier is high, what will be happening? We will have risk. So here we will have risky returns. And then when the exit barrier is low, we will have stability. There will be no risk. So we will get stable returns and then stable returns. When the entry barrier is high, there will be less number of players in the market. When there are less number of players, we will get a high profit. So high returns and then high returns. And then when there are a lot of players in the market, when there will be a lot of players, we have low exit barrier. Now when we have low exit barrier, we will have a high number of people and then low returns. Low returns, low returns. Here we will have risky and then high returns. Here we will have stable and then high returns. Here we will have risky and then low returns. Here we will have stable and then low returns. This is the thing here. When you have high exit barrier and high entry barrier, what will happen? Like that, they will ask the question. You can usually answer it using this graph. So here, if you see that, you can easily do this. That's all about this graph. Now we have come to an end of the 5-force model. What if 5-force model is a very good starting point, but you have to do more research. You have to combine it with value chain analysis or the VRIO framework. This VRIO framework we do not have in the syllabus, or else we will have it in the upcoming chapters, I think so. But in this chapter, we are not explained about the VRIO framework. If you combine it and then use it, it will be a very good analysis they are telling. The next thing is they are talking about the understanding customers and market. Here we will get to know about the segmentation analysis. We have to understand the customer and market to operate in all the segment. It is not always beneficial to operate in all the segment of the market, meaning that we have to target our customer and that customer alone we have to satisfy. We do not have to think about satisfying all the other customer. There will be some target customers who will be giving high profit for our company. That we have to focus. What is market? Market is consists of the business firm, and then it will also consist of the buyer. It can be either physical market in a physical manner, or we can have a virtual market. There will be many sellers and many buyers in the virtual market. There can also be a handful of buyers and handful of sellers in the virtual market. Buyers in the market includes potential buyers. We will also include the potential buyer when we are talking about the market. Segment or market segment. What is a market segment? What is segment? Market segment is a category of customer who will have similar like and dislike. They will have similar preferences. So we can group them together. The next point is the segment should be homogeneous internally. Here in an example, we have three things. One, in a fashion clothing store, we have children's range, and then male's range, and then female's range. Here, all the three things are based on the population characteristics. But inside a children's segment, if you see, only children's dresses will be there. If you see male's segment, you will have only male's dresses. So inside that segment, all the things should be identical, homogeneous. It should be of similar characteristic. And the second point is, it should be heterogeneous externally. When you compare one segment with another segment, the basis of criteria should be different. Passenger vehicle and then commercial vehicle we have. And then we are bringing a new segment called electronic vehicle. Now, passenger vehicle and commercial vehicle, they are categorized based on the purpose of usage. Third thing is electronic vehicle. It is based on the force of electricity, force of energy. So, we can categorize based on different heterogeneous segment also. We have different criteria. That is also one more thing. Segment shall be clearly identifiable. We should be able to clearly differentiate between the two segments. We should show the difference between two things. Next thing is segment size should be reasonable, if not substantial. The size should be of a minimum level. We cannot tell just one customer is one segment. Like that, we cannot tell. It should be of a reasonable size. The segment must be responsive. It should react to the market offering. When we do any change relating to that segment, the customers should react. Only then we can conclude that the customers have something in common. If they do not react, we can say that the customers are unaffected, or they are not. There is nothing in common between the customers. That also we can say. In that case, we cannot call it as a segment. Market segmentation analysis. We are dividing a broad target customer base. We have an entire customers. In that, we are dividing the customers. We are creating subgroups of the customers. Now, what are the subgroups of the customers? Basis of segmentation. On what basis we will divide the customers? We can divide based on the products. What are the buyers who are buying passenger vehicle? What are the buyers who are buying commercial vehicle? Like that, you can categorize. Next thing is demographic segmentation. You can create the segments of customer based on age, gender also. Then psychographic segmentation, meaning that you can use factors like personality traits, lifestyle, influence. That also you can use. For example, in airlines and all, they will have economic class, business class, and then one more class if required. That will be based on the lifestyle. The economic structure, economic power of the people will be playing here. The person who has a high economic advantage, he will fly in the business class. If he has a low economic level, he will fly in the economic class. That is the thing here. Next thing, you can divide the customer based on the behaviors also. You can use the purchasing habit, spending habit. Using on the basis of that also, you can divide the customer. Next thing is geographic segmentation. You can do geographic basis. North India, South India, East India, West India, like that. City, country, like that. In that manner also, you can divide the customer. Now, in one more problem in the organization is that in an organization there will be experts, there will be engineers who will be researching the product, there will be process engineers who will be defining the process for the product. They will not know anything about the marketing or the customer. They will be expert in their field, engineering, but they will not be understanding about the customers and that psychology and all. Those non-marketers, people do not have any marketing knowledge, are called as non-marketers. They will not be considering what is the need of the customer. They will try to emphasize what the organization is able to produce. That is what they will focus fully. They will not focus on the need of the consumer. Here in the leader and manager, we want people who have marketing knowledge. Only then we can understand the need of the consumer and we can act according to the need, and then we'll have a lot of sales. When you act according to the customer will buy your product. That is the main thing. Now, next up, we have to see the basis of competition. Meaning is that why we are competing between ourselves. What is the basis of competition? Basic reason. That is what we are seeing. When we have two or more people trying to achieve the same thing, we will have naturally competition. So there will be survival of the fittest. Who will be most adaptive to the change? They will be surviving. We have three types here. One is that we have to adapt to the change. We have to change ourselves according to the change trend in the market. Or else we have to counter the change. We have to create an opposite trend, different from the trend which is already being changed in the market, or make the change. We should be the one initiating the change. That is what we have to do. Either any of the three things we have to do, only then we can survive in the competition. That is what about the industry analysis. Now, once we do industry analysis fully, we can understand what is the demand, what is the intention of the consumer, what is the price at which the customer will be happy, what is the cost we have to incur, what will be the choice of the customer. Everything we can understand. Next, we are going to see key success factors also. They will also help us to obtain a competitive advantage. They are also called as critical success factors. Now we can see them one by one. Key performance indicators also, they are attached to measure the performance of the key success factors. The aim of the management is to achieve the key success factors. It will be the goals and it will give the scope of the organization. The aim is to achieve the key success factor. We have to keep the key success factor at a very favorable amount. That will be good for the organization. That is the basic idea. Next thing is that key success factors may be the discourse of the market or the industry may change over period of time. We may be able to change the key success factors. For current capacity, the key success factor is time. If we operate a high labor hour, we will get an advantage. Then the key success factor is time. Over the period, we can also change it to number of units on the basis of the change in trend, change in technology, change in business practice. Based on that, we have to change the key success factor over time. We have to reassess the key success factors. Next thing is, as they have given an example, a cell phone manufacturer. You can take it as Nokia. They were very famous for their reliability and then efficient distribution network. And that company, it failed to adapt to the market. It after the end of Nokia, before the end of the Nokia itself, in the ending stage of the Nokia, what happened is that mobiles were being viewed as devices to send emails, for taking photos, for listening to music, for searching the internet. Mobile has changed the usage or the purpose for which the customers are buying. Nokia did not understand this. They did not act according to the needs of the customer. Because of that, Nokia came to an end. Apple, it understood the needs of the customer, and that is why it has overtook Nokia, and it has taken the place of Nokia. Next thing is core competency analysis. What is a core competency? Core competency is a unique preposition that helps a firm to stand out in the industry. Because of that one particular thing, you are very attractive and you are standing outside of the competitors list. You are a very unique person. That is the meaning of core competency. You have something unique. Because of that, you are able to achieve either cost leadership or product differentiation. You are using that unique quality and then you are pursuing a strategy. What is a core competency is that these are the things that a company can do uniquely well and no one else can copy quickly enough to affect the competition. No one can copy you in a fairly quickly manner. It will take a lot of time to reach the place in which you are doing that core competency. Many corporations who forgot to capitalize on their strength, they disappeared. Meaning that when we have a strength, we have to focus the strength and we have to make it more durable. You have to make it more stronger. Only then you can use that strength to stand out in the market. For example, we got star performers, Canon and Honda. They grew very fast. They knew what was their strength and then they just focused on their strength and put more resources into their strength to grow more stronger, and then they started to lead the market. Now the next thing is we have to see the test of core competency, whether a quality is a core competency or not. For that we have to check these three things: relevance, whether it is relevant to the customer, whether the quality is useful for the customer, that we have to see; difficulty of imitation, the competitors, whether can they copy it or not. That is one more question. If they can easily copy it, it is not a core competency. It should be unique. It will be difficult for the competitor to imitate. Breadth of the application, whether we can open a good number of markets with this, whether we can satisfy a large number of customers with this. If we are able to satisfy many customers, it is a good core competency. If we can satisfy only 2 or 3% of the customers, it is not a good core competency. It is just for a small market. We have to use the core competency to satisfy the demand of a large number of people. Core competency, we have to validate it, and then we have to find out the value of the other existing business. In that business, how we can use the core competency, and then we have to keep improving the core competency. We have to create new value chain using that core competency. That's all about the core competency analysis. Now we saw the market segmentation analysis, core competency analysis, industry profitability analysis, Porter's 5 force, basis of competition, everything we saw. By doing all this, we will obtain the information for doing the value chain analysis. That's all we are doing by doing this segmentation analysis and all. We will be getting the information required. Now, if you see, we can say that we completed the strategic cost management pillars in a full manner. We covered each and every part in the strategic cost management pillars. Now, if you see in the concept list, we have covered almost a lot of concept. Only thing is remaining is business model canvas, value proposition canvas. After that, we have something related to the information technology. After that, we will see something about the management accountant. This is some general topic that we will be wrapping up quickly. Now, we have remaining is business model canvas and value proposition canvas. We can get to it. Now, when we are seeing a business model, we have to understand what is a business model. Business model is how a business works. What is the economic logic behind it? From where you are getting the revenue, where you are incurring the cost, how you are providing value to the customer, how it adds value to the entire firm, how it is helping the employees. Everything it will be covered in the business model. Earlier, they used to think that only two things used to make up the business model: how to produce something, how to sell something. Later, they add three more things. They added value proposition, how you are providing value to the customer, profit formula, from where you are getting the profit, key resources and processes. What are the important things in your business? These are the things added later. Now, in May 2013, Alexander Osterwalder, this is a very important name. This name is the name given to the business model canvas itself. Osterwalder's business model canvas. He created the business model canvas which contained 9 elements, which you are going to see here. Value proposition, cost structure, revenue stream, channel of distribution, customer relationship, customer segment, key resource, key activity, key partner. And in center of all this, we have the value proposition. What value we are giving to the customer. These are all the entire things in this 9-element value proposition canvas. business model canvas. Here, one side, if you see, this thing will have a revenue stream. Everything will be related to the revenue. This here, left side will be related to the cost structure. On the center of it, we will use all these two and we will provide value to the customer, value proposition. Then we can see it one by one. First thing is customer segment. Here we can see that we have the customer segment. What is meant by customer segment? As we already know, it is the target customers. Why they are buying from our organization? Who are the customers? That is the customer segment. Value proposition means what is the value you are providing to the customer? How you will provide value to the customer in the form of products or services. The products or services you are providing to the customer. That is the value proposition. Next thing is channels, distribution channels. How your product will be reaching the customer. Digital channel or virtual channel, which you are using for reaching the product to the customer. What channel you are using. Customer relationship. How you are maintaining the relationship with the customer. Whether you have a very good relationship or you are not communicating with the customer itself, whether there is a need for the communication, how you are making interaction with the customer, that will be coming under customer relationship. Revenue stream, from where the business is getting the money. From sales revenue, what are the different streams of the revenue? You are selling petroleum, you are selling diesel, you are selling other lubricants and all, you are selling engine oil, you are selling the a car cleaning cloth and all, like that. From which are the revenue streams in which you are getting the revenue? Whether you are doing direct sale, transaction based price, or subscription model you are following, like that we have different revenue streams. Key resources. What are the most important assets of the company? Without this asset, the company cannot run. For example, in many factories, we will have a main machinery. Without that machinery, the factory is nothing. It can be either man, material, machine, method, money. In any of these five, we can have it as the most important asset. In some companies, we have the employees as the most important asset. In a story, they will tell that in Silicon Valley, a CEO said that the company's net worth drops to zero when all the employees leave the company at evening. What will happen is that the company's CEO is saying that the employees are the main asset of the company. Without the employees, the value of net worth of the company drops to zero. That is what he is trying to tell. That will be told in a story when they are explaining the importance of the employees. The next thing is key partners. Who are the most important partners for our business? When we have a very big customer, we can have a strategic alliance with him. We can supply the products at a low cost to him with a higher quality, and then he will in return share some profit with us. And then when supplier also, we can make a strategic alliance and we can get the raw material at a very low cost. And then we can give some benefit to the supplier also. We can do strategic alliance like this. They will be called as the key partners. What are the key activities? What are the most important activities to be done in a business? For example, manufacturing, supply chain, problem solving. This will be the main activity in a particular business. We have to decide everything according to our particular business. Cost includes the cost incurred by the business to do the activities. For hosting the partners, cost structure, what is the scale of economics you are following, how much at which level you are operating. You are operating at maximum capacity or can you extend the capacity? This and all will be coming under the cost structure. This will be coming under the cost factor. These are all the 9 elements of the business model canvas. Osterwalder's business model canvas. Here they have given some examples. You can read this. This thing is that it's a concept only. What are the key partners? How to find the answer for each of the particular question? They have given the questions which you have to ask, and the answer of these questions will be forming the answer of the customer segment. Like that, we have different questions for each element. Then they have given some examples for in an online meeting platform business, how to implement this business model canvas. In another business, how to implement this business model canvas. Like that, they have given. That and all you can read it later. This concept itself is enough. If you want to understand even more based on an example, you can read these examples later. Now we have completed the business model canvas. Now we have to move to the value proposition canvas. What is the value proposition canvas? The value proposition canvas will be a model which will be entirely based on value proposition. We will not consider any other things, customer, revenue, everything, nothing. We will not care about the cost structure, revenue stream and all. We will care only and only about the customer and how we are providing the value to the customer. Now we can move to the value proposition canvas. This is the concept of value proposition canvas. It will be only and only focused on the benefits that the customers can expect from the business. The business will be giving a specific benefits to the customer. That is what I will be saying. Value provided to the customer from the start of the video. Value provided to the customer means the benefits that the customers will be getting. Here, this is the value map and customer profile. In this value proposition canvas, we have two main categories. One is the value map, which is the value provided by the business to the customer. This is the customer profile, which is the expectation of the customer. What the customer is expecting to get from the product. That is the customer profile. This is the value map. First, we can understand about the customer profile. We can understand the problem of the customer. After that, we can see how we are providing solution to the customer. Customer segment profile. These are the characteristics of the customer. In this, we have first element as customer job. Customer job means it is the problem of the customer. It describes the important issues that the business customers are trying to solve. We are going to solve this problem only. The problem is called the customer job. That is the task or the thing which you are going to perform for the customer. The next thing is pains. Pains is the problems which the customer tries to avoid, annoys the customer. These are the features that the customer hates. These are the features that the customer hates. It may be unwanted cost, it may be a situation, it may be any negative emotion, it may be risk also. The customer wants to avoid the risk. These are the things that the customer hates. Customer jobs is the problem. Pains is the features the customer hates. Gains are the benefits that the customer want. Extra benefit that the customer want. It may be a complementary benefit. It will be expected by the customer. Jobs is the problem of the customer. Pains is the things that the customer will be hating. Gains is the things which will be loved by the customers. It will be benefit complementary to the customers. Now, next thing is a value proposition map. In this also we have one is the gain creator, pain reliever, another thing is the product or service. We can see it one by one. First thing is in value proposition map. These are the features of the product or service that we are providing to the customer. It will help the customer to solve the problem. Products or services. It will help to have the personal job done. It will help to complete the job. It will solve the problem. It will give a functional solution. Pain relievers. Pain relievers are the specific features in our product which will alleviate the specific customer pain. It will eradicate the pain of the customer. It will remove all the things that the customer hates. Removing the hating factors. The customer will not like some factors. Those factors will be removed by the pain reliever. Next thing is gain creator. In this, what is gain? Gain means the good things for the customer. Gain creator means this feature of the product will give good things to the customer. This will create the customer gains. Gain creators are addressed by the value proposition by creating benefits and outcomes. It will give benefits to the consumer. So here we can see that value proposition map and customer profile are matching with each other. Product or service will solve the customer job, problem of the customer. Gain creator will give the things that the customer will be liking. Pain reliever will remove the things that the customer hates. This will be the perfect match between the customer profile and the value map. This will be a fit. When you achieve this fit properly, it will be called as a product market fit, PMF. Achieving this product market fit is very, very important for the businesses. When speaking about the product market fit, you can assume it in the form of a jigsaw puzzle. This is the market, entire market. This is the entire market. In this, we have a problem in this market. This is the problem that the customer wants to solve. This will be solved by our business. The product which our business brings into the market should be exactly fitting into the customer problem. Only then it will be called as achieving a product market fit. All the products should be matching the expectation of the customer. Gain creator will be giving the gain required by the customer. Pain reliever will remove the pain of the customer. Product and services will solve the problem of the customer. That's all about the value proposition map. Value proposition canvas itself is completed. What are the benefits we are giving? What are the expectation of the customer? That itself is divided into three parts in each, and then we are analyzing it. That's all about this value proposition canvas. Next, we are going to see about external environmental context. This we already saw the subparts, the market segmentation analysis, industry profitability, everything we saw earlier. The introduction to that part alone we left out, that we are going to see now. External environment is the environment outside the business. It will not be in control of the business. We have to adopt strategy to adapt ourselves to the environment. We have to change according to the business environment. We have to understand it. External environment are the factors beyond the control of the organization. Next thing is industry that are relatively comparable. What is industry? Industry is a group of companies that are relatively comparable. They are operating in the same sector. They will be selling the same product. They will be targeting the same customer. They will be purchasing raw material from the same supplier. Like that, we can keep a separate criteria, and based on that, we can make a group of the companies. That will be called as an industry. There is no particular definition for industry. In a competitive market, we have to operate and we have to bring up our own concept of industry. We have to make our own definition for the term industry. For example, a two-wheeler riding app, if we are having a two-wheeler riding app, that app may consider only other two-wheeler ride provider as their competition. They will not consider other Maruti, Suzuki, like that car manufacturers as their competition. They will have their own competitor and they will consider all the two-wheeler riding apps as the industry. That is their own specialized definition of industry. Therefore, the scope of the industry, what will be included in the industry, that will be a subjective issue. It is told in a different manner by different people. When you have a narrow scope, when you include only some organization into your industry, it will be manageable. You can easily analyze them. But it will become meaningless because in the real market we have a lot of competitor and a lot of people are affecting our business. But when we are doing analysis, we are considering only some competitor. So we cannot apply this analysis into the practical world. So it will become meaningless. We have to divide the environment into two sets. One is the remote environment, other thing is the industry operating environment. Remote environment is the one which is beyond the organization's operating situation. What is the operating situation? We will have our own circle. Within the circle, we will operate. That is the industry operating environment. Anything which is outside that environment will be called as remote environment. It will be the social, technological, economic, environmental, political, legal, and ethical factors. Steeple. This will be the factors which are beyond the firm's operating situation. These are all not controlled by the company. A single firm, if we use our firm, we cannot do we cannot exert any pressure, or we cannot create any change in these factors. We cannot change this on a single manner. So we cannot influence these things. That will be the remote environment. In the industry operating environment, it will be our own circle. We can exert significant influence. Relatively, we can exert higher influence in this industry operating environment. All the factors, customer, competitor, regulation, advocacy group, supplier, this and all we can control to some extent. We can influence to some extent. Industry life cycle, this also will be coming under the industry operating environment. All these factors will determine the profitability, growth of the profitability in the upcoming years. It will be decided on a long-term basis. These factors will affect our long-term profitability. These are also called as key success factors. We can call it as that is the introduction for the industry profitability analysis. Everything about the external environment. That's all. Now, if we see, we have completed the business model canvas and then the value proposition canvas. Now we have IT related points and then the management accountant points. Now we can see that. Now we are going to see about the information technology in the strategic cost management. Information technology, you have to use it in strategic cost management because data is the new oil, and we have to analyze the data and we have to provide useful information from that. Based on that information only, we can take the decisions. And then we have three things here. One is the information technology, information systems, and then the information management. These three are interconnected, but they are not the same. These three are interconnected. One is connected to the other, but these three are not same. We have to understand each and everything separately. They have given a paragraph format, but I have summarized it into a single page. Now we can read that. For example, for that, first you need to understand some basic terms. First thing is, what is the difference between data and the information? On a whole manner, if you see, on normal manner, if you see, these things will be giving the same meaning. But in the context of information technology, data means it is the raw details collected from a source. It is the raw data. It is not organized, not structured, not analyzed. Anything is not done. Just in a collected format itself, you are keeping it. That is the data. What is information? You are organizing the data. For example, you are using Excel or you are using pivot table in Excel to analyze the data. You are creating a pie chart. You are creating a bar chart. If you do that and all, it will be in a form of organized data. You can analyze it and make conclusion. That kind of organized data will be called as information. Information will be data, raw data plus processing. You will be analyzing, that will become the information. The next thing is information technology. What is the meaning of information technology? Now, hear this clearly. You have to understand the difference between these three in a very clear manner. So you have to listen very clearly. First thing is, what is information technology? Usage of computer technology to handle data. Computer technology is the keyword here. Computer we are using to handle the data. That is the main purpose of information technology. Nothing more than that. You are using computer for different kind of activities doing within the business. Finding use cases for computer tools and implementing them. You have computer. Using that computer is called information technology. You are finding the different purpose for using that computer. For example, e-purchasing, e-payment, e-sourcing, payroll management you are doing in computer. For this and all, these are the purpose of using the computer. That also you are doing under information technology. You are finding the use case for where we can use the computer. That will also come under information technology. In simple words, using computer technology to handle data. The next thing is information management. What is information management? Acquiring, custodianship, and the distribution of data. In simple words, if you want, acquiring will be same as collecting. You are collecting the data. Storing is the same as custodianship. You are storing the data. Distribution means sharing. In our organization, if a particular team requires data, you will be sharing the data. That will also be coming under information management. Management of information. It involves the management controls, internal control mechanism. In every company, we will have certain sensitive data, customer database, supplier database and all. We will have controls to who can access them, when it can be accessed, for that which permission we need to get, whether we can copy it or not, when we have to lock the system, when the system will be accessible, at what time we can do it, in what mode we can share the data, everything they will have internal control. That will be coming under the management controls, management responsibility, properly doing the functions. The functions are collecting the data, storing the data, sharing the data. These three work you have to do in a very proper manner. It should be very accurate and you should not leave any loopholes in it. That is the meaning of responsibility. What is the meaning of governance? You are governing the data. You are keeping controls and then you are doing it responsibility. Now, these three, when you are combining it, it will come under the governance. Performance measurement. When you analyze the same data for information, after collecting the data, when you are analyzing it, it will be coming under the performance measurement. That is the meaning of the different terms which are given here. Information management is the collecting, storing and sharing of data. You have to do it properly. You have to maintain controls for it. You have to do analysis of the data. That all will be coming under information management. Information technology is using the computer. Usage itself will be coming under information technology. Management means how you are collecting, storing and distributing the data. Next thing is information system. Information system refers to the entire framework for handling information in a company. In a company, how you are handling the information, the entire system will be coming under the information system. It is the meaning of putting IT into practice. You are using the computer and putting it into practice. What will be the components of information system? Information technology, usage of computer, information management, the process which you have for collecting, storing and distributing data, human resource, the employees who are working in the IT department, taking advantage of the information. How you have to use that information? We can use that information, make analysis, and then we can make strategies based on the data. For example, when you have high customer in a particular area, you can do marketing strategies focused on that particular area. Like that, you can make marketing strategies and menu strategies. That may be product strategy or market strategy. You can do that. That is the meaning of taking advantage of the information. When you do all this when combined, you are calling a name. That name is the information systems. When you see here, IT is the usage of the computer. IM is the collecting, storing and securing the data. People, procedures, everything will be combined, and when you combine all these three, you will get the information system. I think now you would have understood the clear difference between these three. Now one more thing, in this page, this paragraph format, given points, these points I have summarized into the written handwritten notes. Here I have given the summarized points, but this table I have not summarized. So here we have to see this table in the study material itself. Now IF strategy. What is the IS? IS meaning information system. Strategy means we will be creating a strategy based on the data which we are getting. The strategy which we saw here. For a particular SBU, we will be making the strategy. That strategy will be made by the top management by analyzing the information. So it will be flowing from the top management to the lowest employee. It will be coming in a downstream. So it will be on the top to down approach. what is the business strategy that we have to see? It will be business driven. We have to do it based on the business. It will be demand oriented. What will be the demand of the customer? Based on that, we will create the strategy. It will be for a particular SB or organization division. We have to do with the IF strategy. But when you come to the IT strategy, it will be the name of how. How means how we are using the computer in our day-to-day activities. That is what is the important here. We have to see the technology, information technology. It will be technology focused. It will be bottom up from each particular activity. How you can use the information technology computers that you will be seeing. Supply oriented, meaning that what is the capability of the technology, what the technology will provide to the organization. Next thing is activity based. For each and every activity, buying, selling, marketing, for each activity you will be deploying the computers. Next thing is IM strategy. IM strategy means where you are employing this process, for which data you are using it. Next thing is management driven. It will be the management, information management and management driven. The next thing is directional. It will be multi-directional because you have to collect the data, store the data, share the data. It will be across the organization. It will be relationship oriented. You have to maintain relationship with each and every person, and only then you can manage the information properly. Next is organization wide. You have to do it across the organization. That is the difference table given here. That's all about the information technology part. Till now, we saw what is the concept of IT and IF strategy. Now we have to see how we can implement it in the business. We have to use the information technology to counter the 5 forces identified by the Porter. It will be called as the Porter's 5 force model. We have to use the information technology to counter the 5 forces. The next thing, we have to use the new technologies, Industry 4.0, big data, this and all we have to use in our business. And then the cost of information technology tools, the cost of computer software and all, it is very high. That also we should consider. Next thing is, we have to use the thing across the supply chain. Information technology should be used across the supply chain and the value chain, and it will help to maintain the information flow, supply chain flow. We can keep smooth the flow of products between the supplier, customer and all. It will be very helpful for doing that. The next thing is, we have to see how to apply this in the Porter's 5 force model. For the threat of new entrant, we can create the barrier using the technology. You can create some IT application and give it to the customer. The customer will be very comfortable with the IT application. If he is very comfortable, he will not choose the opposite product. He will not buy the product of the new entrant. He will stay with our organization itself. This you can achieve using the IT application, breaking down the barrier. The other organization, he can use it as a tool. He can use information technology as a tool to break our own application. He will create an even more comfortable application, which will be attracting the customer. The next thing is supplier bargaining power. Here we can use the information technology in the method of e-procurement. You can see the concept of e-procurement in the upcoming chapters. It will be discussed in detail there. For now, I am telling it in a short manner. E-procurement means everything for the buying from suppliers done by online itself. First thing, you will be selecting the supplier based on e-tender. You will be sending an electronic invitation for tender. Suppliers will be submitting their quotation in the online application. After that, you can select the supplier based on the lowest quotation. And then e-purchasing. You will place the order through the software itself. E-payment. You will make the payment through online banking itself. In this manner, you need not reach the supplier in a physical manner. This will prevent the cartelization of the supplier. If you do this on a regular manner, there will be no cartel of supplier affecting you. You can buy from the best source at a best price. You can buy paid purchaser database. Purchase database is that there will be a database which will be containing the details of the supplier. You can select the supplier from the database also. You can rotate orders. You need not keep a single supplier. You cannot rely on a single supplier. You have to keep a panel of suppliers. You have to rotate the orders between different suppliers. You can compare the price and order with the supplier where we have the cheapest cost. In that way, you can use the information technology in supplier. Next thing is buyer. For a buyer, you can use it for doing marketing. As I already saw, you can see the particular area, the particular place where we can do the marketing, and you can do targeted marketing. Locking the customer. You can lock the customer by supplying spare parts also. When we are supplying, we will not only supply finished goods, we will supply materials, spare parts, everything will be sold by different businesses. For example, when we are selling spare parts, we can manufacture the spare part in such a manner that it will not work with the other third party spare parts. If our spare part is used by the customer, for other spare parts of the same product, the customer has to naturally come to us to buy, because our spare part will not work with the third party product. So we have to lock the customer in that manner. Next thing is the threat of substitute. We can prepare specialist software in the drug manufacturing process. For example, in pharmaceutical companies and all, for researching, they are using specialist software. That software will help to create the drug very fast. So it will be helping in the computer-aided design also. Like that, you can use information technology in threat for substitute. Next thing is competitive rivalry. In existing competition, you can use the information technology for reducing the cost. When you're reducing the cost itself, you can obtain the cost leadership advantage, and you will have the competitive advantage. In this manner, you can use the information technology tools in the supply chain, in the chain of value, or else you can use it in the Michael Porter's 5-4 strategy. Next thing is value chain. How you are going to use the information technology in value chain. In primary activities, in inbound logistics and all, you can use barcoding system, RFID, radio frequency ID, that and all you can use in raw material purchasing. You can track the raw material, where it is coming, where it is loaded, whether it is stopping in a particular place. You can track the raw material journey from the supplier to your warehouse. You can use the enterprise resource planning software for planning. You can use JIT method for stock control. We will be seeing in detail about JIT in the upcoming chapters. Then we will be using computer-aided design, robots and all during the operations. We can use automated vehicles and all to move the raw materials between our warehouses. The next thing is, we have to perform outbound logistics. We can use RFID information technology for vehicle scheduling, automated warehousing and all. We can use the outbound logistics in which you can use the information technology. Next thing is marketing and sales. You can maintain customer database. You can sell the customer database. You can use that customer database and create analysis and all. In that analysis, you can do the customer habit analysis, segmentation analysis you can do. In this, you can make the customer relationship management more easy. If you have more data, you can manage the customer very well. In this manner, you can use the things information technology in the primary activities. After sales service also, you can use the information technology. Like you can keep maintenance, customer support. Like that, you can keep information technology in that manner. Next thing is secondary activities. Secondary activities, firm infrastructure. It will contain the administration, accounting, and all. You can use softwares for accounting. For technology development, you can use information technology. For example, online ticket booking. Like that, we have a lot of places where we can apply the information technology. Human resource management. You can maintain the payroll in online. You can keep the employee data in online. Like that, you can use the information technology for maintaining the employee data. Next thing is procurement. Same like that, when we saw procurement, we can do it e-procurement. That's all will be about the application of information technology. Now the next topic is role of management accountant as a leader. The role of management accountant has been has been evolved in a very much high manner in the last few years. The roles and responsibilities have changed drastically. The management accountant should have the characteristics of a business leader. He should be able to identify opportunity. He should be revealing insights. He should make the big strategic decisions in companies. Complicated challenges are there in a business environment. For that, we need a management accountant to understand them and make strategies for the company. Now, what is the role of management accountant? Traditionally, he was doing accounting, he was doing planning, he was developing the management information system, he was maintaining the capital structure, he was participating in the just management, and then he was providing an ease control. But now, they have to bring key figures and then telling a story. They have to make the top management understand about the real situation, and then they have to do analysis, planning, innovation, leadership. Everything will be done by the management accountants in the upcoming years. Now we can see that management accountant is a very important position which will affect the business performance. He has to do the strategies, he has to control the operations, he has to implement the technology. Everything should be done by the management accountant. If accounting is a language, management accountant is a poet. This is one more quote given in the study material. Next thing is, management should combine technology, financial analysis and strategy to help the business. He should be in a leadership position also. He will be working very closely with the C-suite. C-suite meaning that the persons in the organization who have the word chief between their names. Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Information Security Officer. With these people, the management accountant will be working and then he will be making the strategies. The next thing is analysis to offer new insights and visions. The management accountant should make new stories for the numbers. He should be analyzing the numbers and making the management understand about the numbers. What is the meaning of the numbers? He should maintain efficiency of the organization by using supply chain innovation, total quality management, profitability and all. He should make analysis and provide insights. For planning, he should be able to make financial decisions. He should be developing the strategies. He'll be working with the CEOs and all. He'll be implementing a long-term plan. He will be the one creating the long-term plan also. The next thing is innovation. How he will be innovative? Management accountant should be innovative. He should be bringing the technology inside the business. He should be the role of initiator. He should bring the new changes into the organization for promoting the efficiency. The next thing is he should be a leader. He should be the one making the plans. He should be helping to execution. And then he should also consider the professional and business ethics to lead by example. He should be a role model for all the employees in the company. He should be a very important part in the decision making. The next thing is, what are the qualities of a leader? Leader should have a vision. Manager will create a goal, but he will not have a vision and all. Leaders are change agents. They will start the change. Managers will be the persons who will maintain the status. They will maintain the current status itself. They will not do any improvement. Leaders are unique. Managers will be copying. Leaders will be taking risk. Managers are there to reduce the risk. Leaders are for long-term operations. Leaders will be thinking in a long-term manner. Managers will be thinking in a short-term target. Next thing is, leader will be growing personally. Leaders will be knowing, learning each and everything every day, and then they will be keep on improving themselves. Managers will be working on existing skills itself. They will not do any improvement. Leaders will be coaching. Managers will be directing. Leaders will help the people to understand and they will work closely. They will be on giving on-the-job training. They will be doing work closely with the employees and they will understand the employees in a more wider manner. Next thing is, leaders will create followers. Management will have employees. Leaders will create a followers for their philosophy. Next thing is, management accountant is a leader who is driving strategy. Management accountant should develop the strategy. He will align it to the organizational structure. He will do it as per the resources that is available, and then he will do it as per the culture and philosophy of the company. The management accountant will help in the decision making, and then he will make communication. He will communicate whatever he is doing. For example, if they are having a plan, not only making the plan is sufficient, he has to communicate it effectively to the lower level employees. We have to make such decisions executed also. We have to do those decisions properly. We have to be ethical also. All these things is possible only by a management accountant. Next thing is communication. Communication means transfer of information. It may be horizontal, diagonal, or vertical. And then all formal and informal exchanges. Whatever you are talking, everything will be coming under communication. Then we have to communicate the vision, strategy. When you clearly communicate these two, what will happen is that when you introduce a change towards the strategy, the employees will be able to accept it easily. They will think that it is for the long-term benefit of the company. And when you say company, it includes the employees as well. So they will not give any resistance to the new changes and all. it will you have to communicate in both actions as well as words. You have to use words and actions also you have to convey. You have to give importance to quality, for example. Like that, you have to give importance in action also. You have to communicate informally but effectively some problems. Next thing is management by wandering around. This is one more new term which is given in the study material. In this, what the managers or leaders, management accountant will do is that they will wander, they will roam all around the factory, and then randomly they will be inspecting some process. In that process, they will be able to find problems. They will be able to find where the employees are requiring training, where they are facing problems, how we can improve the process. Everything that can be observed by the manager using this technique. He will do random sampling and he will find out various improvements that are required in the process. Next thing is the intellectual level of the receiver, cost budget, availability of time resources, nature of information. All these factors should be considered by the management accountant when communicating something. For example, intellectual level of the receiver. If the employee you're talking to is a lower level employee, he does not have that much knowledge about the technical things and all. You have to use a separate language. You have to use a language tailored to that employee. You have to talk in a layman terms. Only then he will understand. You have to use the communication as per the cost budget. You cannot buy satellite communication and all for a small company. There will not be budget for that. Time resources. If you have less time, you have to communicate it quickly. If you have more time, you can communicate it slowly. Nature of information. If it is highly sensitive information, you have to communicate in a particular mode of communication. That also you should see. Decision making. The management accountant should be making the choices. He will have a lot of alternative. He has to choose the one which is best for the company. He should consider the size, industry, level of maturity, vision, mission, positive, negatives. Everything he has to consider when making the choices. The consequence, the impact of the choices may be positive or negative. By making a decision, the effects on the company may be either positive or negative. When the things, size, industry, vision, mission, everything is clear, you can take a smooth decision. Next thing is strategy development process. He will be the one creating the strategy. He will be working with the persons in the C-suite. He will be the deciding factor in an organization. A decision when he is taking should be objective. It should be for the growth of the company. It should not be for the personal gain of the management accountant. It should be fully informed. It should be conscious. It should be explicit. You have to tell it out loud and then deliberate. It should be consistent. You have to follow it properly. Logical and aiming for end goals. The goal should be very clear. The next thing is that management accountant has to make decisions regarding the benchmark, standard, budget and all. He has to make the decisions. He has to communicate effectively with the other department also. The next thing, he should have the leadership style. Business ethics is also important. This is the end of the chapter. We have reached the end of the chapter. Just these 3 paragraphs. That's all. Business ethics. It will be the difference between right and wrong behavior. What is right and what is wrong? It is defined by the business ethics of the management accountant. We should. It is very important in a business environment. And then ethics should reflect values. Ethics will reflect the values. What are the culture which you are having? It will be reflected by the ethics. Milton Friedman has a classical approach towards ethics. He will say that the business leaders are responsible for the wealth maximization of the fund providers only. But nowadays, business has changed its orientation from shareholder to stakeholder. Earlier, they used to focus only on the shareholder wealth maximization. Now you have to consider the stakeholder. Stakeholders includes customer, supplier, environment, business, everything. You have to give back to the environment also. You have to give a socio-economic approach. You have to consider the society and the economic situation of the country also. You should have an economic motive, and then social cost also you should consider. You should be competitive, you should be making profit, you should be efficient, and then at the same time you should not do any damage to the environment. That should be an ethical issue. You should be acting carefully in that problem. Next thing is business ethics is very important in the business. For the socio-economic approach only, we have the concept like triple bottom line. This we will be studying in the upcoming chapters. For example, in IFRS and all, or India is when you are studying in financial reporting, there will be an India is for property, plant and equipment. In that they would have given that we have to incur the site decommissioning cost and all. What is the meaning of decommissioning cost? For example, you are creating oil rig. You are extracting oil from underground. After extracting all the oil, you have to make the site same as before. You have to restore the site. That is the meaning of saving the environment. If you put it as it is, it will be a damage to the environment. That is what they are saying. You have to take decision based on the environment also. That's all about this chapter. We have seen all the concept in this chapter. Now we can see the questions in here. Now we can see the MCQs. Here they have given 4 options. We have to choose the correct one. What they are saying is that pain reliever are different from gain creator or not. Pain reliever and gain creator counter each other effect. Pain reliever and gain creator are one and the same thing. Pain reliever are different from gain creator. Like that they have given options. The same thing only have explained in the paragraph format with some names and all. Here what is the answer is that pain reliever are different from gain creator. Both are different. That we have already explained in the concept. Next thing is here they have given 2 statements. Which is correct they are asking. Pains and gains are controlled by the business. All the pains and gains need not be responded or addressed. First statement is not correct. Pains and gains are the things that the customers hate and customers like. This is not controlled by the business. And then when you are designing a particular product, you have to make a decision relating to what gains and what pains you are going to address. What are the problems that will be solved by your business? Our product will not solve all the problem of the customer, but a particular problem it will solve. That is the motive of the value proposition map. For a particular problem, it should be the solution. Not all the problem will be solved by our business itself. And then we will have different pain and different gain. In gain pain also there will be more which is the most important problem, which is the less important problem. Like that we will have categories. We have to satisfy the most important pains and most important gains. That we have to do it. Otherwise the customer will not buy your product. We have to solve an important problem. A problem which is not a problem to the customer. If we solve it, the customer will not be satisfied. That is the thing here. Next question is that we have communication and decision making management by wandering around. Under which topic it is coming? That is what they are asking. It will be coming under the topic of communication. So you have to select only one. The next thing is next MCQ. They are saying about where we can use the RFID. RFID system is an information technology application where we can use it. We can use it in both inbound logistics and outbound logistics. So 1 and 2 only will be the answer. The next thing is a business model should contain which of the three components? Value proposition important, profit formula important, key resources important, impact factor is not one of the factors. So 3 is the wrong. 3 will not be included. 1, 2 and 4 will be there. So 1, 2 and 4 only. The next MCQ is that they have given asked the question based on this graph. I already told that there will be question based on this graph. You can see this and say that when there is high entry and exit barrier, there will be high margin with risky return. The next thing is that MCQ number 7, IT strategy is supply oriented, IF strategy is demand oriented, IM strategy is dimension oriented. Here, IT is supply because it is the capability of the computer technology. IF is the demand, what is required by the customer. Based on that, we will prepare the IF strategy. IM strategy is not dimension oriented, it is relationship oriented. So third one is wrong. 3 only is the wrong thing here. The next thing is here they have created a information technology application for automatically placing order with the major supplier. This is relating to the purchasing. So it will be coming under the procurement thing. Why it will not be coming under inbound logistics is that purchasing is not covered under inbound logistics. So it will be coming under procurement. Next thing is here we have a question. In this we have 4 options. 4 options, more of a statement. 4 statements they have given. In this, which is the wrong statement they are asking? If you read it itself, you can see that 1 is the wrong answer. An increasing number of organizations are segregating management accountant in separate managerial accounting department. They are saying that management accountant are nowadays doing only management accounting. They are not doing any other planning, analysis, execution, leadership and all. They are not doing. They are just doing accounting. And on the face of it itself, you can see that this is the wrong thing. Nowadays, management accountants are doing innovation, making strategy. That's all we saw now. So first statement is the wrong one. The next thing is MCQ number 10. Here, what is the category for the market segmentation? Market segment should be distinct, it should be accessible, it should be measurable, it should be profitable. All the 4 things should be satisfied. The next thing is test your knowledge case based MCQs. Here we have given a story and then 10-12 points they have given. In the questions what they have asked is that what are the pains in this 10 points? What are the gains in this 10 points? What are the pain reliever, gain creator in this 10 points? They have asked. In the solution they have given that the value proposition map they have given, and then value map they have categorized the features they have given into pains, gains, pain reliever and gain creator. You can refer to this. It will be very basic common sense only. So I am not reading it. That's all about the questions in this chapter. We have completed all the concepts and the questions in this chapter. Please subscribe to this channel if you found this video useful. Thank you.